Hello and welcome to episode.
This is the tale of Captain Jack Sparrow.
Hello and welcome to episode 92 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today is Stephen Meyerink, everybody.
Keira Knightley.
Yeah, he just showed me that lonely. What is it? The Lonely Island? Is that what you were showing me?
Yeah,
That's old, man.
it's not. Yeah, like Rob, you are so old and out of touch. Oh
I
my
live
god.
at a Franciscan monastery, for God's sake. Okay, like
Yeah, with a bunch of kids who
Yeah,
should
they
know
don't-
this.
they don't really watch Saturday Night Live, though.
That's not a Saturday Night Live thing. The Lonely Island is its own thing.
Okay, well, I mean, I had my students recommend like Freeman's Mind to me a couple weeks ago, and I
All right.
sat down and watched. Like,
I
2
take
hours.
back what I said. Maybe they don't have the taste I wish they did.
Yeah, I didn't really like Freeman's Mind. That didn't. It was kind of funny, like
Didn't free your mind?
it was funny for a few minutes, but it didn't really do it for me. So, Steven, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. We had some fun playing Helldivers the other night.
We did. Until the match where you and my roommate killed me 6 times.
Well, to be fair, you started out by
Derek, have you played Helldivers?
No, not yet.
All right. Well, you get the gist of it though. Co-op, like dual stick shooter thing. It's like sort of has some RPG progression type stuff. It's fun, but there's friendly fire. And Rob and my roommate proceeded to drop like 4 satellite dishes on me. And then I protect the 2 of them when they die, revive them. They get up, immediately drop a turret, which guns me down, and then they leave and finish the level without me.
that is not. Wait a minute. That
In
happened.
fact, that's almost exactly what happened.
Wait.
I'm pretty sure that might have been blow by blow exactly what happened.
No. Let's start at the beginning of that mission, where as soon as we landed, you blew my head off.
All right, yes, that did
Like,
happen.
figuratively, or
Like literally it happened, but it was an accident. I dropped ammo for Rob to pick up and then accidentally shot him in the face.
Yes, I accidentally. Well, now I have a freaking laser beam, so when we play again, we're gonna have some fun. Like I was actually able to do some pretty hard missions last night by myself using 2 turrets, and I have a walking mech now, so we're gonna have some fun when we play. We're actually gonna probably play right after we're done recording. Haven't had a chance to introduce Derek yet. Derek, how you doing, buddy?
hey, I'm still Derek. I'm currently lost in an endless sea of triple triad. I will be humming shuffle and boogie for the rest of my days.
Oh my god. I am so glad they added that. How many cards do you have so far?
I have. Hold on, I'm logged in right now. I'm actually playing. I have 30, exactly 30.
Okay,
so I
you
can
have 5 more than
adding
me.
better cards to my deck and killing all the people around the land. I want to curse so much.
Don't.
My
Do
ultimate
it.
goal is just to have the Zidane card, and it's so easy to get. It just requires enough MGP that I need better cards to earn it faster.
Wait, how do you get that one again?
Zidane you get in the gold booster packs.
Oh,
And,
okay. yeah.
and there's only 8 cards in the pack. So it's like not like it's impossible to actually get.
I bought like 5 of those packs and I just got crap cards. Triple
Uh,
Triad, guys.
what
It's
was-
in Final Fantasy 14, by the way, in case you need context. They just added it along with the gold saucer.
What was the Final Fantasy IX card game? What was that called?
Tetramaster.
Tetramaster. Nobody liked Tetramaster though, right?
No, because it had broken mechanics.
Yeah, and it also didn't explain itself at all. Like the game was kind of like I don't know. There,
And there was a mandatory like arc where you had to actually win a tournament.
yeah, that was rough. That was rough.
In Trino, which has one of my favorite songs in Final Fantasy IX.
That's a good song.
I did really like Tetramaster in Final Fantasy VIII though. I really did like that game.
Tried.
Sorry, Triple Try. I'm sorry. It's Final Fantasy VIII. It's a blur of nonsense and icicles and maybe Squall's dead. I don't know. Like
Oh my god, you're such a baby.
nobody likes Final Fantasy VIII.
Whoa!
You know what? I am tired of society doing mean things to Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII may have a ton of flaws, but you know what? That game is fun.
Okay, I just like how history's been rewritten. Like now people hate on Chrono Cross, and I think Chrono Cross is the best.
They're wrong about that too, and don't try
Well,
to pander to me.
Yeah, they are wrong about that.
Yeah,
and don't
they-
people wait? Wasn't it people didn't like which Zelda game? Like Twilight Princess, I think is the most
Well-
contentious, right? Like people hated it.
First, they didn't like Wind Waker, and then they got Twilight
Oh, yeah,
Princess, and they loved it. And
Now
then
they love
Skyward
it.
Sword came out. Now everyone hates Twilight Princess because it was pandering, and
I
everyone
think-
loves Wind Waker.
I
and
think
then-
Skyward Sword's getting a lot of hate now. Like that's getting
Yeah.
a lot of retroactive hate. Like the internet is kind of starting to turn on that game.
I actually sort of think Skyward Sword deserves more criticism than the other games, though. Like, Skyward Sword has 40% great ideas and 60% the world map.
Yeah, and I think Twilight Princess is God. I need to write that editorial. I've been meaning to do this for like 2 years now on like how a game kind of lives on in the psyche. Like, because we were talking a little bit in the pre-show warm up, like Metal Gear Solid 3 came out with very little fanfare. It reviewed well, but I think people rightfully kind of blasted it because its camera was completely borked in the original version of it, and then
Did
Subsistence.
people really think that? I never had that problem.
Oh,
I actually
Yeah,
don't like
I
the
don't
new Metal
remember
Gear
hearing that
camera.
either.
whoa! Go
Like the
back.
new Metal Gear camera's like, hey, I'm a third-person action game.
No, no. Have you played Metal Gear 3 with the actual like decent camera, like the 3D camera the way God intended? It's a completely different game. Like it doesn't feel like rooms anymore. It actually feels like a jungle environment. Try to do the helipad area with that camera versus the original. It's night and day. It's like playing the game with
I
the
have played with that camera. I hated it.
how why?
That's not how classic Metal Gear is meant to be played.
I
Sort of like how you're not meant to play Resident Evil without tank controls.
oh my God,
Yes,
here we
I
go
am
again.
still in agreement
I
about
did
that.
switch to okay, so I did switch to tank controls on the remake because the animation started to bug me, which Derek kind of pointed out, and I'll agree with that. And I got really good with the tank controls again. Took a little bit of getting used to, but I'm sorry that the camera. I'm not going to let you get away with that. The camera in Metal Gear 3
I'm
makes
not. I'm not saying that the camera is inherently broken. I'm just saying Metal Gear 3 was built to be played with the Metal Gear camera, and it works better that way. Later games are better with that camera because they were designed with that camera
I
in mind.
actually think some of the environments are completely messed up, and the end feels like you're only running north if you're using the original Metal Gear camera. No, I think it actually feels like a real 3D environment with the 3D camera. But anywho, what I
Role playing games.
what but what I'm saying is like Metal Gear 3 came out, nobody really cared about it, and now it's like heralded. I think Games Radar put it as number 2 or 3 on their all-time 100 list right now.
Really?
Like
I mean, it's great, but
it's kind of it's taken on a life of its own, I think, because when you play games that have a lot of depth, it maybe doesn't reveal themselves when you're playing it in a review environment. For example, like we're talking to the guy right now that's probably going to have to barrel his way through Bloodborne, cigarettes in my mouth the entire time trying to get a review up for that really fast. Like,
Despite the fact that after he reviewed Dark Souls 1, he said, I'm not going to review Dark Souls 2, and then reviewed Dark Souls 2, and then said, I'm not going to review Bloodborne, and then is going to review Bloodborne.
yes,
yeah.
I do it to myself because I am a masochist. I play these games for God's sake.
Clearly.
But I think that sometimes, a game kind of takes on a life of its own. And Twilight Princess, reviewed, with the exception of Jeff Gersman, like that game was one of the highest reviewed games of all time there for a while. And now people are like, it's not that good. Meanwhile, Wind Waker got kind of chastised a little bit. Now everyone thinks that it's the bee's knees.
Which it is.
I love Wind Waker. I do. I think Twilight Princess is a better game. I think Wind Waker is a timeless art style and a better story.
I had yeah, okay. I can agree with that. I had a really interesting conversation with my roommate last night. We were talking about like how like relative flaws of Zelda games, like none of them have to be perfect. Like I know people think Ocarina of Time is perfect, and maybe it is. Again, I can't separate my lack of nostalgia from how I feel about that game, but like you talk about like relative flaws. Like Skyward Sword has an awesome like the desert dungeon, the art styles, great stuff. But then it has the empty world map that takes forever to navigate. You look at like Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess has cool items and a cool art style, but then it has things like the gear or whatever it was, the gear item that you literally
spinner.
use once. And, yeah, the spinner. That should have just been a dungeon gimmick rather than an item because you use it like once outside of the dungeon.
Yeah, but it also has the snow dungeon in Twilight Princess, which is one of the best Zelda dungeons ever.
Oh yeah, and like
That
the claw shot. That's the thing is like each of them sort of has like relative merits. Like like whenever someone's just like this game is terrible and nowhere near as good as people thought, it's like well this game probably had some good elements to it, and you know
Well, it's like it's not to bring up the Evil Within again, but I'm going to. That game feels like it was made by two development teams. Like you have
the
two or
ones who
three.
made the good levels and the ones who made the other levels.
Yeah, like you have two or three levels there. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing. It's so tense. It's so creepy. I love this. And then you get to the action sections, which are like,
We're gonna throw 30 dudes at you.
yeah, well, this game.
Which is great. Like Resident Evil 5 is built for action like that.
Yeah.
So like, for as much as I don't think it plays well as a Resident Evil game, I still think it's a fun co-op shooter.
I was gonna say we need to get that maybe over the summer and play it together again because I'm on that Resident Evil kick. I kind of want to.
No, I think that game is legitimately fun, but like that's because that game is built for that kind of shooting. But then you get like the Evil Within is built for you're stumbling around and not taking good aim. It's more of a Last of Us type thing where you're not meant to be able to like fight carefully. So then when they put you in broad daylight and just spew enemies at you, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that the DLC will kind of fix that. But it's kind of like one thing that I've really been interested in games is like the rough areas of games, like the areas that very clearly did not go through either a good focus test or they don't feel right, they don't play well with the mechanics. Like Dark Souls, you can bring up the Bed of Chaos. Like there's nothing fun about that boss fight. Like I don't know who was asleep at the wheel at that boss fight. It is not fun to do a leap of faith that you can get picked off in midair and get like shifted around the environment. It's ugly. It's nasty. Terrible idea for a game. Like there are sections in Uncharted that I don't like. I'm like, well, this isn't really fun. Like,
How about every Uncharted final boss?
oh god, oh my
And
god.
again, I love Uncharted, but Uncharted 2 has one of the dumbest final bosses ever.
Are
Like
you talking about the where you need to shoot the plants?
where you fight like
Oh.
Blue Hulk.
Yeah, that boss pissed me off.
Oh, that boss is terrible.
Yeah, well, only because like that game is built sort of again, Nathan Drake can do superhuman agility, but like it's sort of built around this like, people have physical human limitations, so like your shooting system, shoot a guy in the leg and he falls down. Whereas now you're fighting a guy who doesn't flinch and just runs up and like dump truck punches you on stuff, and you're like, wait, this is not what this game's strengths are.
Yeah, and
The game is
actually,
like a solid 9.5, by the way, just in case the listeners are like, "Wow, you guys are hating on Uncharted 2?" Like,
Yeah, no,
that's just one flaw in like an incredibly amazing game.
9.5.
yeah, Uncharted 2 is just deliciously amazing.
9.5 my ass, but no, that's neither here.
Whoa, are you saying it's higher or lower?
I'm saying it's much lower. I actually,
Oh.
I would give it a
Your
7.
face is much
I'd
lower.
give it a 7.5. That game has amazing moments. Like that whole train sequence was absolutely jaw dropping. So amazing. I can barely say it. But I think you guys are forgetting the boss in that train that is abhorrent.
I
like
had no problem with that turret guy.
I mean, that's a section that
he's a bullet sponge. He's a
was
complete
frustrating,
bullet.
but I got through in like maybe half
think-
an hour to an
I think
hour.
the other problem is that if you play the Uncharted games on hard, which I know Steven's going to then chime in and say I had no problem with them, when it's kind of like playing
that
the
game
Evil.
was hard, man.
But if you start playing the Evil Within on its highest difficulty, if you start playing Uncharted on its highest difficulty, the cracks really start to appear. And we've also been through this years ago. Uncharted and I do not get along because every time I try to do something in that game, the game's like, nope, and just kills me. Like, the game literally had a suicide button
Well,
one
I
time.
think because you're trying to play it more like a free-form shooter,
Oh, yeah.
whereas
No,
Uncharted is very much like a Hollywood ride, where it's like, you're sort of shooting the targets to make the event start, but
Right.
it's meant to be sort of this linear, funnel you through an exciting set-piece moment type
Yeah,
thing.
and meanwhile, I had zero problems with like Max Payne 3 and zero problems with Wolfenstein, which are two games that people were like, man, these games are really hard. And I'm like, not really. Like, for whatever reason with Max Payne 3, I think I died twice on a hard playthrough. Like, I had no problems with that game. And meanwhile, everybody else is losing their mind. So,
That fight in the monastery at the end of Uncharted 2, like I did play on whatever the hardest difficulty is. That game was really hard. Like I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I didn't die a million times. Like I died a lot. And the monastery part, mostly because in the hard mode, it's like here's 9 waves of enemies, and if you die on any of them, you're back at the beginning.
yeah, that's the other part. But anyway,
Yeah, role-playing games.
role-playing games. I just think it's interesting
Yeah,
to think about how games, like, how the narrative of the game after the release kind of goes along. You know what I mean? Like, now everybody looks at The Last of Us and says that was clearly the game of the year when BioShock Infinite actually reviewed better than it did when it initially came out. Like, the interesting stuff like that I always get excited for that. But, we wanted to do a podcast today because we're getting...
You can't throw that in and then move on.
What?
The Last of Us is a better game than BioShock Infinite
I
in
would
every way.
No, that's what I'm agreeing with you on that. What I'm saying is that like The Last of Us is now getting all of these huge accolades and all of this praise, and I think it's worthy. I think it's Naughty Dog's best game. But when BioShock Infinite came out, BioShock Infinite reviewed better than The Last of Us. Like,
Well, that's like very, very minute, like granularity. Like they both had overwhelmingly positive reviews.
Last of Us got pinged a little bit by Polygon, by GameSpot. I mean,
Yeah, but the guy who reviewed it for Polygon gives most games a 7.
I know, but what I'm saying is that like the narrative.
Like he actually uses the full scale.
Okay, as I'm saying, the narrative of the game changed. Meanwhile, now BioShock Infinite gets railed.
No, I'm not saying that I'm not disagreeing with you that the narrative can change, but I think you might be mistaken in that saying that The Last of Us
Oh, it wasn't panned.
did not
It
get
wasn't panned.
like I feel like people right from the get-go were talking about how amazing that game was, and it only continued to gather that
Right.
reputation.
And I think it's also a game that it ages better. Like I'm replaying that now because I have my PlayStation 4 now, and I'm replaying that, and it is a game that has aged pretty nicely. Although I still contend that the beginning of that game is awful compared to later sections. But
You don't like narrative sequences though. You like sequences where it's like, here's every tool you have, go do what you want.
I like a game that leaves me alone and lets me decide how I want to play it and not hold back its best features for no goddamn good reason at the
It's
beginning of
called
the game.
pacing, Rob.
I'm an adult. I can figure the game out. Give me a Molotov cocktail so I can have some fun.
I don't like everything being accessible immediately. Like within reason.
I agree.
It's not like Final Fantasy 13 where I want to go through 9 chapters before I get the battle system. But I don't. I think it's overwhelming to have everything available right away. Like maybe there could be a new game plus where on the second playthrough you immediately have everything. That's fine. But like for a first playthrough, I think contributing to the pacing is really important by limiting you intentionally to a certain degree.
But I think
I agree that like you don't want to go the route of Final Fantasy 13 where you are waiting 30 hours to get access to your full system. But like a narrative game, especially like one like The Last of Us, no matter how you want to play it, there is merit in pacing things out. That's why you end up with RPGs that are like, here's your entire party all at the beginning. And then it's like...
I hate that. I really don't like that.
Yeah, and it's okay to do that if you're going to do it quickly, but you need to have some sort of variance. You need to have things happen to make the party dynamic interesting. That's like, one of my major things that I might have with Final Fantasy 15 is like, I'm okay with them having these 4 characters alone, but you need to challenge that. Like, okay, Ignis is like born and raised to be Noctis's counsel and will protect him. Ignis has to have a moment where Noctis is a total D-bag and he has to contend with, wow, am I protecting a total jerk-off? Or like Noctis there has to be interesting things happening within that dynamic. The thing is, you can't have staticness. And in a game, if they just throw all of your options at you right at the beginning, it's like, all right, here's everything. Just go experiment. A, you're overwhelmed because you're introduced to everything all at once. And B, you don't have a moment to experience each of those things individually to learn how they work and then figure out how they work together. It's also like, nothing is ever going to change because I have everything right from the start.
But what really frustrates me about The Last of Us, and I get where you guys are coming from. I definitely want pacing. There have been games that throw so much at me, I almost put the controller down and go, okay, that was too much. Like, I didn't need all that. But what frustrates me about The Last of Us is twofold. One, they hold back the game's best features until you're about 3 hours into it. Like, the whole crafting system doesn't really open up until you've gotten to Pittsburgh. Like, that's when the game finally says, okay, now you can start crafting your items and making decisions, which is the best part of that game. And 2, the scenarios that they put you in because you don't have the tools necessary to deal with them, the game puts you into auto combat about 3 or 4 times before you get to Pittsburgh. And the combat in the game is flighty and nasty for a reason. I agree with that. But because I now don't have shivs, or I don't have Molotov cocktails, or I don't have enough ammo to deal with, I'm fighting with the game's mechanics, whereas the one combat scenario, your first clicker encounter, is terrible because you have no means of dealing with it and there's no way to get through it with stealth. Then when they put you into the next clicker encounter, you have your stealth systems and the game finally starts to work. It's like the game is punishing me at the start. It's like if Metal Gear forced you into combat if Metal Gear 3 forced you into combat during the Virtuous mission. If the game forced you into combat, I'd be having the exact same complaints. But it doesn't. The game gives you the tools necessary to deal with it. At the same time, see where you guys are coming from, it's almost information overload at the beginning of the game. So I get it, but I don't think The Last of Us makes a good first impression. This is an argument that we've been having for 2 years. I want to move away from it. I still think The Last of Us is the best game that Naughty Dog has ever made. Okay? I just think that the beginning part of that game is kind of trashy. Like, it's not very fun. It's kind of bad. That's all I'm saying.
I think you say that as a person who's played through the game, in full to completion. Like, you've played it more than once, haven't you?
I've played about 2.5, and I'm gonna probably play it through 3 times.
I think that's the kind of issue that really only emerges on a second playthrough. I mean, I don't know.
I had to
That's
push my way through the
right.
beginning of that game. I was not liking
There's
it. You
never
guys
a
were
point in
you guys
Last of Us where I was like, man, this is rough. I guess I better suffer through it. Like,
no, that's
Like
honest.
I played the beginning of that game and thought it was one of the best introductions to a game I've
Well,
ever played.
cinematically, I was having fun with it, but the gameplay, I
But
wasn't
that's the
really.
thing is the beginning is a prologue to the gameplay. Like you are not supposed to have full gameplay access because it's a cinematic introduction. And yeah, you could argue that once you've beaten it once, that's less exciting because you're like, yeah, I know where this is going.
for sure, yeah.
No, I
But
was getting.
it's paced that way for narrative reasons, and I that's why I'm like, yeah, this should be that way because it's introducing things. I think The
Yeah.
Last of Us has one of the best intros in a game ever.
Cinematically, I can agree with you, but what drives me nuts about that game is that first clicker encounter. I know you roll your eyes at me, Steven. I can hear you doing it right now, but that first clicker encounter is terrible. Like, there's no way to be stealthy in that section. There's no way to deal with all the problems that the game's giving you. The game is forcing you into a combat scenario that has a one-shot auto kill, which can happen multiple times, which pisses me off because the number one complaint that I read about The Evil Within from every review is the one hit auto kills. And I'm like, well, guess what? I died more in this one section in The Last of Us because of that one hit auto kill than I did in the Evil Within. Why was it okay in this game, but it wasn't okay in the other game? Like, that's the thing that really gets me is like the consistency from the reviewers is like, if this pissed you off in this one, for the whole Last of Us, I didn't die nearly as much as I did in Uncharted 2. That's probably one of the reasons I like The Last of Us so much. I felt like if I was careful in that game, if I took my time, everything was fine. And when I made a mistake, I was like, man, I really screwed up. Like in the hotel, I was doing fine and I got caught and we had a shootout and it was nasty and I loved it because it was my own mistake. But at the beginning part of the game just auto spawns enemies that are aggro on you because it's not your mistake. The game is like, well, you have to figure out how to do the combat right now. You have to go through the shooting section. And I'm like, well, that's not my fault. Like, that's where I don't like that. And this gets to exactly what you guys are talking about, which I don't like control being taken away from me. When the game lets off and lets me play it the way I want to, I think The Last of Us is fantastic. I don't like when the game starts enemies aggro on me because that's what the game wanted to do.
I appreciate your point. I think we should talk about RPGs.
I think we should. I think we should. And we get very heated on this, but I see where you guys are coming from too. It's still a good game. Still a good game. 8 out of 10. No, I'm just saying. Okay, moving on.
8 out of 10.
Final Fantasy 9, 7 out of 10.
I'm gonna 7 out of 10 you right out. Never mind.
You can get me back when we're playing Helldivers tonight. So,
You in danger, girl.
I know, right? So yeah, I got my PlayStation 4, and I just wanted to say that I really, really like what they did with it. It's a great user interface, really fun, easy to use, super simple to like download a game and have it update very quickly. It seems like the whole internet infrastructure is better. This to me feels like the console that I was promised with the PlayStation 3 and we never quite got there, because it was such a huge jump from PlayStation 2. I'm not bagging on PlayStation 3. But like having the games just auto update is like a godsend because I fired up my Vita after not having that thing out for like 3 months, and I had to sit there for like 20 minutes waiting for it to update. Every time I go to my 3DS, I shudder because I'm like, okay, I want to buy something on the eShop. No, now I have to download the update. Okay, now the update's taking really long. Okay, now
Well, that I think we should make sure we're comparing carefully because the 3DS has the most obtuse and worst internet system I've ever seen in my life.
yes,
Like the fact that when I was trying to download the Smash Brothers demo or like download a Smash Brothers patch, it's like, yeah, I could search Smash and it'll be the 40th entry in the list, and I'm like, I think there's a problem here.
yeah, and I have to remember my password every time I update the damn thing. Like it just.
Well, I mean,
It's not it's well, if you use a different password for everything and you only log into it once in a while, like that can create a problem. And meanwhile the PlayStation 4 is like this is one of the reasons why I know somebody's going to get pissed off at me for mentioning it, but like I love the fact that I can keep my computer on and it will just auto update games on Steam. I love that. The PlayStation 4 now does that. That is fantastic. Like I love that.
I actually really like the cloud saving that PS Plus has. That's
Yeah,
my favorite thing ever. I
that's
love
awesome
going
too.
anywhere and being like, yeah, I logged in and all my saves are here.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic what they've done. They've made such huge strides on that system that it is now a pleasant experience for me to use it. It is not the PlayStation 3 like, okay, I want to play, this game and I put it in and oh, there was a patch released, so now I need to download the patch. Like it's just it's so nice. They took some of the best parts of what's been on the PC, they've added it to the consoles, and now it's fantastic. Like I couldn't be happier with the PlayStation 4. I really like it, except for the battery life. Dear God, those controllers. You got to be kidding me. Like I can run one of them dead in like 3 hours. Are they serious?
I, I haven't noticed them being that bad, but
I think compared to the PlayStation 3, like I used to be
Well,
able to
yeah, they're
get
lower, but
80s.
I wouldn't say I've had 3 hour problem.
I'm
I
getting
get about 5 to 6, but
okay. I'm a little shocked with the battery life on them, but I do love the controller. I think it feels really good. And with that, I got a chance to play some Diablo 3 on console, baby. Talk about timely releases.
yeah,
That game's really good on console. That game's really, really good on console.
it is.
it
Yeah,
is.
I never played Reaper of Souls, so it was really perfect for me to jump back into it, and I need to get back on it, like so many other games. But
Yeah,
those,
I,
the Last of Us Nephilim refs are what I really wanted to check out.
yeah,
Right.
they're cool. I like it on console. My problem is I have so many Paragon levels on PC that I'm always like, I'm not going to play the console version.
Yeah, no, I
Like I
completely agree
would,
with
but
you.
it's just like I
Yeah.
play it if there's like four people or like people over that want to play local co-op, which is fun.
Oh yeah, and what they did with local co-op, like being able to very easily equip items, that is just a very smartly designed game. Like you're sitting there playing it and you're going, they really thought about a lot of this stuff. They figured out how it's very easy to re-equip skills. If you are playing couch co-op, then only one person can really do like the deep investigating of their equipment and their skills, but you can very easily see the last couple items that you picked up, whether or not you should equip them for better bonuses. It's just a really smartly designed system, which takes me back to when I was playing Dungeon Siege 3 and I was just like slamming my head on a table like, okay, you guys clearly didn't think this stuff through. This is not very smart. This is kind of annoying. And look what happens when you give a developer some time to really make advancements on a title. I mean, there's a reason why what's Diablo 3 sales now? Like 15 million or something astronomical like that.
A
Like,
lot.
yeah, I mean, there's a reason that this game has sold so well. And Blizzard, said it to Derek earlier. Blizzard, if it was any other company, they would be on to Diablo 5 by now.
Right.
And
Yeah.
3 and 4 would have just been completely forgotten. But instead, they've just done a really good job of advancing it. Feels,
Battlefield.
yeah. Doesn't Hardline come out in like a day or two? Did it already come out?
I don't know, something like that. That's the most tone deaf release I've ever seen.
Yeah, especially considering some of the stuff that's going on in the news right now. Like,
Considering I'm pretty sure not an hour ago I read about, I don't know, a cop shooting somebody or somebody shooting a cop. Either way sucks. And then it's like, here's a game where cops shoot each other.
would you put Payday in that category?
Isn't that like a heist game? I don't know. I haven't really played much Payday, so I couldn't say.
I was just wondering, like, why hadn't paid? Out of all the games that I thought were going to get like some media attention and some anger, not saying that that's what I look for in my games or what I want to see. Payday kind of just flew under the radar. Like, I actually
Well,
view
I think it could be that the emphasis in Payday is on heists versus Battlefield Hardline is about cops and robbers killing each other.
you do kill an awful lot of cops in Payday, though. Like,
But but like the difference is, and I think the difference would be that Payday again is like this is a game where you cooperate to pull off heists, whereas Battlefield Hardline is like you're the cops versus the bad guys.
oh yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And that and the fact that Hardline had like the most tone deaf theme song I've ever heard in my life.
Oh boy, was it Cop Killer?
I can't remember what it was, but it was like bad timing. And I don't think they did it on purpose, but it was just really bad timing.
Yeah, I probably would have shelved that game. Like after all the stuff that happened over the summer, I probably would have said, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, or make it like Dinosaurs or something. I
You're
don't.
talking about the company that just killed Maxis, which I'm angry about, by the way. Register me as angry.
Uh,
Now we're
yeah.
gonna get Sim Ant 2.
I wish we could get SimAnt too. I loved SimAnt.
Just
I'm
remember
not
all,
being facetious at all.
remember all this anger
Like-
when they announce Mass Effect 4 and you start getting giddy.
If they make it a sequel, we'll talk later.
I think that's the plan, isn't it?
It might be.
Yeah,
I still think it's going to be a prequel.
Yeah, you've been saying that.
I think it's going to be like, we're doing the first contact war because in today's society, we have to explain everything in the beginning.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I've been doing. A lot of PlayStation 4, and I am ready for Bloodborne. Bring it here now. Let's get this. Let's get.
So
this
I may
started.
actually pick this up, Rob.
I know. I'm like so proud of you, Derek.
Growing up.
Like what made you do it?
I don't know. I think. Well, your hype is contagious for sure, and I like the focus on offense rather than defense because part of what bothered me so much about Dark Souls was, okay. So the primary thing that I don't like about Dark Souls and Demon Souls is the atmosphere and the UI. And I know that Bloodborne is going to be similar atmosphere. It's like dark, 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 dark. But I think that the UI and I don't know, like something about the game's presentation has always kind of bugged me, and it feels weirdly incongruous with how tight the combat feels. But that it's just never really jived with me, and I think that Bloodborne also looks similarly dark and dreary, but it's a different kind of dark and dreary. It's a little bit more interesting to me than your generic gothic horror. Well, I guess this is also gothic horror, but different than Dark Knight in dark suit fights big monster guy. I think it's mostly your hype and the focus on more proactive, offensive combat. And I watched you guys that I'm sure you've seen the videos that have come out of the first hour or so of the game. I watched those and I thought that it looked more interesting than I anticipated it would for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'll try it. Help me.
No, just give it a shot.
To me, it's this is going to sound silly that I would force myself to like something, but for me, it's really similar to like how for years and years, all I hear is how amazing Monster Hunter is, and every time I play it, I'm like, everybody who likes this is insane. Like I'm like, this game controls like crap, and I know that's a mechanic, and it's like grindy and da da da. And like I kept being like, I feel like I'm missing the point. Like I feel like there's no way this many people would enjoy this experience if there wasn't something of merit to it. And so like I tried 4, and I sort of like the demo. I was like, this is weird and obtuse, but I guess I could see the depth. And I've been playing it a little more and sort of actually liking it. And I feel like partially it's that I've been forcing myself to try to find what people like in that so I can appreciate it. Because it's like, yeah, I want to have a cool gaming experience.
That's less than ideal, honestly, but. I'm in the exact same situation as you. I've been also playing Monster Hunter 4 recently, and it's because I have somebody to play with in person who can actually just say, like, oh, yeah, I know that's obtuse and doesn't make sense, but, like, here's how it works. Like, here's etiquette for when you go into a multiplayer hunt. You should only grab this many items. And, oh, this is what this NPC does. Or, like, oh, yeah, I know the skills are really stupid and don't make sense, but you have to go into this menu and click on this thing to actually understand, like, what happens when you get a certain number of skill points. And little by little, the pieces come together, and I think it starts to get a lot more interesting. Monster Hunter, and it's a good comparison to make, I think, Stephen, because for me, the reason why I kept pushing through with Monster Hunter is because I like the style, like the aesthetic better than I like Dark Souls aesthetic. And I think that they're similar in that they're both games that have very precise combat that may not make sense right away, and you kind of have to learn how the game plays. Like
it does not make itself open to you.
They're not.
It's like, yeah, here's your tools. Good luck.
And I'm saying that that's actually not a good thing. Like I'm not going to defend that design choice. I think that it being so obtuse and opaque at the very beginning is not good. But once you push through that, you'll find a lot of depth. And I think that there's a similar situation happening in Dark Souls. It's probably not as hard to get into as Monster Hunter is, but I feel like if I can get over that barrier with Monster Hunter, I can get over it with Bloodborne.
See, I always go back to Demon Souls, which was, my first exposure to the Souls games. And I had watched some videos online because everybody was talking about this game, and it was right when Atlas picked it up. It was a huge cult hit in Japan, and people were complaining and wanting to get it over here, and we finally did. I actually think that the core of Dark Souls, the Souls series in general, and Bloodborne with it. I think the core of, attacking, stamina, I think that part of the game explains itself very well. Because it's very visceral and it's very easy to comprehend. So the core combat, I think, is easy to understand. The problems come from, like, oh, if you have this much weight, you slow down, or oh, you can
If you
only
have 8 humanity, you have more magic find.
right, or if you're in human form, you can summon people to help you. That's the stuff that people have been having a hard time with. Like I read so many message board forums on like, hey, I got cursed in Dark Souls, now I have half health. What the hell's going on? How do I fix this? That's the stuff that I think they actually did a much better job of explaining in Dark Souls 2. I think that the obfuscation part of it was kind of gone in two, in that they explain things like, oh, this is why your health is going down. You read the item descriptions, they tell you about getting back your human form. Oh, you can only summon people when you're in human form. They do a much better job of telling you that. And I think another thing that has held back players from getting into Dark Souls is the community, which is saying that, oh, it's super hard. To me, it's not about the difficulty. To me, it's about you're on an adventure, you're in this world, go figure it out. That's the part of it that I find very interesting. Like the parts that I love about the Souls games are I'm going into an area I've never been in before and I'm terrified. Like I don't know what's around the
I
next
do
corner.
like that, and I think that's what has drawn me to Bloodborne and makes me want to give it a go.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that complete lack of information, like going in completely blind and just figuring out how to get through the world. That's exciting to me. What's not exciting to me is having to figure out these opaque game systems that you don't. I'm not saying that it has to be like, again, I don't need to have my hand held and I don't need them to tell me, beat me over the head with stuff. But when you have to actually go online to understand like why a mechanic is doing a certain thing, then that's problematic to me. And I guess
I can agree. I can
you can
agree.
find out some of that in the game. So actually, what I wanted to ask you, Rob, is from what you've seen so far of Bloodborne, do you think that it's moving in the direction of providing a similar experience atmospherically and mechanically while also reducing that wall? Like, do you think it seems to be more transparent in terms of like the more esoteric mechanics?
See, I'm kind of two minds of it because I've watched the video that you're talking about too. I think IGN did a great job over the past month of showing a lot of video, having a lot of really good developer interviews. I'm getting a lot of deja vu right now, which was when Dark Souls 1 came out, like they would explain systems in interviews, and I couldn't tell, was that just a bad translation job or was that the vaguest thing I've ever heard? So like I'm reading a lot about some of the online interactions and about how you'll summon each other to each other's worlds, and there's a lot of talk about the covenants or hunter groups or things like that. And I'm having the exact same thing that I had with Dark Souls 1, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to get in there and really figure out what this is, because somebody is describing possibly third or fourth hand translation, or maybe the crew is just being noticeably vague. But what I have seen that makes me feel so that's on the one side, which is me thinking that it is going to have some of those opaque parts that you kind of have to sift through a little bit. But on the other side, what I'm seeing is a little bit more of the Dark Souls 2, like in the 18-minute video on IGN, the beginning of the game. It seems like they're explaining their systems better in the descriptions, like they're explaining what each element does on your character. It also seems like they're reducing the number of attributes on characters and reducing the number. I want to be careful how I say this because then people are going to think that they're simplifying. It seems
They are
like
getting rid of the excessive number of stats and focusing
yes,
it down to stats that are more comprehensible and make sense. Like you
I
don't need strength, stamina, vitality, and vigor.
right.
Like those can all be encompassed by one or two stats, maybe.
Right. And Steven just said it better than I could. So I think that they're trimming the fat. I think they're going more in the Dark Souls 2 way. But at the same time, part of the appeal of the game is not knowing, like when you go up to this guy who runs a certain covenant, you don't really know what you're getting into. And there's something appealing about that. And so I think as long as they keep that stuff on the higher level, that is, I think, what'll make you happy, Derek, as long as the game is explaining the core gameplay elements better.
Okay.
Like, Demon Souls did a terrible job of explaining why you should upgrade your weapons. Like the first time you upgrade a weapon in Demon Souls, you're like, okay, it's doing more damage than it was before. It was doing 100 damage, now it's doing 106. Okay, big deal. Yeah, it's doing 106 damage, but now it's also got better scaling and your strength is going up, so you're actually doing 130 damage and you don't even realize it right now. That's the kind of stuff that they need to do a better job of explaining, and I do think Dark Souls 2 did a better job of that, and I think Bloodborne's doing a better job of that as well.
Okay.
So
The vibe I've been getting from Bloodborne as a whole is that they're trying to make it accessible to players who like the positive aspects of the series, but don't like dying 30 times because they just simply do not have information they need.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think they're doing a better job of that.
I think so long as they do that, and this is just a personal taste thing, but as long as it's not just like needlessly gross
You
uh,
might have a problem there.
visually, yeah. Well,
They have at least since fixed the absurd blood from E3.
I don't
that was
know.
I remember
It
seeing
still
the
looks
first
pretty
trailer,
crazy.
and I was just like,
I
I
mean,
mean, that's not
there is a boss who her hair is her meat flaps. Like, I mean, I think you're gonna have some of that. Like,
okay. Well,
it's
I like Silent Hill because I think that Silent Hill is it's dark and creepy and gross, but there's a lot of interesting mythos behind it. Like I enjoy all of the psychological things that are happening behind the scenes, and I don't like just oh look at the blood guts blood. I
yeah.
want it to be interesting. I want there to be lore behind it. Like that's fine. I can deal with macabre. So just so long as it isn't nothing
macabre
but
for the sake of being blah.
yeah.
I think the Souls games are actually good about that. I know what you're talking about, that there is some gross gnarliness in Dark Souls, but you know, I love what Miyazaki said about like the gaping dragon, and he was like, yeah, I had one time people brought me like flies and maggots all over a zombie dragon, and he was like, that's not what I wanted. Like I wanted it to look sorrowful. I wanted it to look like you're saying the Silent Hill, like there's a lore reason why this character is the way it is. It's not just disgusting for the sake of being disgusting.
Yeah.
Um, my real concern with Bloodborne, after seeing a lot of videos, and you know, I'm not ready to get off the hype train. I am firmly in the conductor's seat, driving this thing to crazy town right now. My biggest concern is twofold. One, I've said it before, they need to get the dodging right, because now that that's your only means of real defense is to dodge around the environment. If that doesn't feel good, the game's going to be trash. Like that dodging needs to feel perfect, and it never has felt good in Souls games. It's very mercurial. Some people have it completely figured out, but I still think dodging works 9 times out of 10, and that's not good enough. It needs to be a little bit better. It needs to feel
Oh,
like messed up.
I feel like dodging is perfect in that
Oh
series.
no, dude, you didn't play enough too. You did
Well,
not
yeah, but
play enough.
I don't count two. Two's not real.
Okay, it's just
Well, Rob wants to forget about it after the DLC he had.
yeah, I do. I
Speaking
love,
of great DLC, I hear the Lords of the Fallen DLC is horrendous.
What? What?
apparently it's like 90 minutes. It's like three.
Apparently, it's 90 minutes and awful.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that game wasn't
10
very
minutes
good,
too
but
long.
that's neither here nor there. So that's my one concern is I really want the dodging to feel good. This plays into what we talked about before. I want it to feel like it's my mistake. Like I want to feel like
Me
I
too.
got hit. Okay, my fault. I did it wrong. I'll get him next time. The other thing I am really worried about, and it's because of how fast the game is, that camera looks like it's got some issues. Like on the bigger enemies that they're fighting in some of the boss videos, oh dear. Like Dark Souls is never really, the Souls games in general have not had very good cameras, and they have gotten me killed on occasion, and some of the crazier boss fights have been kind of a giant guessing game about where the character is going to land. I'm a little worried about that. Maybe it'll be okay, but that camera is, yee, it
See,
could be a problem.
even if Bloodborne doesn't pan out for me, there's a ton of stuff out this month that
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, I love it.
Well, that's why the episode of this podcast, the name of this podcast is going to be Anticipation, because I feel like we're all anticipating very, very big releases right now.
yeah,
So
March is fantastic. I can't wait. And I already have my hands on one of the games I was looking forward to, which is Atelier Shally.
well, tell us a little bit about it, sir. Let's get away from Souls and Bloodborne and all that. Tell me a little bit about
Let's start with the most important question: is the soundtrack as good as the rest of those games?
So far, yeah, I like it.
Awesome.
It's doing a better job, I think, of balancing the kookier tracks with the more somber stuff. So there are a lot of Atelier games out there, and this is the third and final entry in a trilogy called the Dusk Trilogy. So it's the sixth one on PS3 because, holy crap, they made a lot of these games. But the theme behind this one is that they're in a world that's actually dying, and they kind of started to approach this idea with the past two games in the series. But this one is actually showing like an actively dying world, and the main characters are alchemists who are trying to figure out what's happening in the world, and one of the two, there are two protagonists in this game, and one of the two is trying to find a way to restore her village's water source, which is like dried up, and so her people are actually on the brink of dying out. So it's a bit of a darker, more melancholy take on what I traditionally associate with a very happy series. Like they tend to be very goofy and lighthearted games that are slice of life stories focused on individual people. Sorry,
that actually kind of reminds me of Wild Arms 3, which is like, you know, a lot of the backstory of that game is like the world is dying. Why is it dying? And you have, you know, when you find out more of the backstory about like the main characters and their parents and like what they were working on, like, you know, why is the world dying? That strikes me as a, like you said, it's very less. It sounds less slice of life and more like a little more drama heavy than I would think. I mean, maybe the game isn't necessarily drama, but it is a dramatic concept.
Well, it definitely had a more. There was a little bit more drama in the beginning than I'm accustomed to, and for the people who want slice of life stuff, that's still in the game. So, like the previous game, Escan Logi, there are two playable characters. They're both named Shally, which is, I mean, they went to give the game a unified title, I guess. One of them's named Shalot, and the other is Shalistera, so they're both named Shally for short. And they have little dialogue portraits that differentiate between who's speaking to help. But of the two, there's the one who is trying to restore her village's water source, and then there's one who is just basically trying to make it big and get rich. And she's living in the poor part of town, and she's trying to support herself and her mom, and all she does is pick up trash, and like she's just trying to make a better life for herself. And she has the more slice of life story, and you get to choose at the beginning which one you want to follow more closely. They both meet up, but I like that you have two options for how you want to experience the game's narrative. And what I was saying before about the more somber atmosphere, that manifests in the musical score, because you were asking how it is. There's a lot more piano and kind of plaintive violin, and there's a melody that plays on the screen where you select which of the two characters you want to play as. And I left it there for like half an hour because I liked it so much, and because I was having the usual terrible bout of indecision, like, oh, who do I want to play as? Anytime I get that kind of option. Star Ocean 2, I'm looking at you like Claudarina, I don't know. But I haven't played a ton of it. I've probably put like 2 hours into it, so I can't tell you too much yet. But I'm digging on it, and I like the music. I like the atmosphere. This one has a 360-degree camera, which is new for the series. They've always had these pre-rendered, well, not pre-rendered. They've always had fixed camera angles. So as you can imagine, like PS2 era RPGs, there will be you'll just see a certain perspective, and then you move through that area accordingly. And this one has like full areas that you can actually rotate the camera around, and I think it makes the world seem bigger, and it's a more interesting world than any other Atelier game, at least so far, because in the very beginning you're sailing across a sand ocean because all of the water has dried up, and these areas are dead, and they're like, oh, we have to scavenge for plants and stuff. So I think it's hooking me more than previous games in the series right away.
That really sounds Wild Arms 3. It's like the sand ocean and stuff. Gosh.
Yeah, like Pagaia.
Like sorry, I just like it when anything is like Wild Arms 3.
See, I was thinking Dragon Quest, but that's just me.
Which one?
Wasn't it in Dragon Quest 8? You needed like a ship to kind of cross. 8
you had a wagon.
Yeah, but there was some part in 8 where you had to get like
for that wagon, your dragon. It means I like your butt.
Did you play Breath of Fire 4? There's that in Breath of Fire 4 where they have sand oceans. I don't know.
But it sounds like you like it.
I do like it so far. Like I said, I'm not very far, so I can't give you really detailed impressions. But it is a lot better than the other game that I'm playing for review.
Oh boy, I was hearing about this.
God.
We can talk about that, right? It's not under embargo, is it?
No.
Well, I mean, I don't want to make you talk about it too much.
There are reviews up for it, so. And no, it's not under embargo. So there's a game that I really wanted to like, based on the art, which is the only redeeming quality it has. Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters. This is a visual novel with strategy RPG elements. I hate it, actually. So this game was it came to my attention because I heard that Nobuo Uematsu was working on music for it, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I like it when he branches out and does other stuff beyond like working on his band, the Earthbound Papas or whatever. So It's a game about it's a visual novel about a company of exorcists, basically like for-profit exorcists, and you play as a generic high school student who enters the company. Like he transfers to a new school because of course he does, because Japan. And I know that's reductive, I know, but he transfers to a new school and then finds out that he can see ghosts, and he gets inducted into this company called Gatekeepers, and they're like, all right, we go out and we just take exorcism requests, and they take care of the ghost, and then they make money. So the game initially sets itself up with this premise, like
Ghostbusters.
yeah, it's Japanese high school Ghostbusters. There's a mysterious ghost that appears in the beginning. She's a girl in a sundress, and she's like, she's like, save me or something. I don't know. So you're a little bit hooked because you're like, I wonder what the story is with her. Why can't I see her? What's happening here? But then it just evolves into a series of episodic short stories. Like every chapter is basically like an episode of an anime. It to the point where it literally starts with the same intro song and that closes with the ending song as a character is like discussing what happened. But they're all these compartmentalized stories, and they do not work for me at all. They're unrelated to one another, and each one focuses on a new side character who's introduced just for that episode. So
I hate that.
yeah, it's really bad. Like it's like
watching
Cowboy Bebop
Naruto
does that
filler
whole thing.
forever.
Yeah. So they start. One of the first ones is there's a music idol, like a girl idol, because again, of course there is, and she's like, oh no, I'm hearing ghost voices at my concerts, and you have to figure out why, and then you find out who that ghost is, and then you exorcise them, and then it closes out, and that's it for that character and that arc. Like that's the entire game. It's just these little episodes where nothing relevant to the overall plot happens, and it makes for a really boring, like, to me, like, I don't care about progressing in the game because every time I start getting invested whatsoever in what's happening, it's like over. And even then it's not interesting at all because all of the characters are completely flat archetypes, like to the extreme. I've had this problem with like Nippon Ichi games in general. It's why I don't like Neptunia. It's why I have problems with Disgaea these days, because I think a lot of these characters are really tropey, or they're like, this is my trope. LOL, I'm going to go in the opposite direction to subvert it. But that in itself is just a trope if all they do is try to
subvert tropes.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I was saying with static characters. It's like, I'm hoping, like, again, I'm not trying to change the subject, but like, with Noctis and his bros, if it's just them being bros for the entire game, yeah, I like the idea of that, but you need to do interesting things with your trope. It's okay to have this, like, if you're going to have, like, the Moe character, I know what that is now, and, but you need to, like, do something dynamic with it, rather than just be like, yep, I'm the pervy character. I'm going to flirt with every girl for the entire game, because that is the entirety of what I am.
Oh, so ring a bell?
Yeah.
And you guys were also saying the same thing about Danganronpa, which was like, it starts out very tropey, but apparently it gets away from that.
That game does an awesome job of breaking that mold immediately.
Yeah, it kind of plays with your expectations there a little bit, which I find, kind of hilarious. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, so Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters does not do that at all. It's what you see is what you get, and it's tremendously, like, mind-numbingly boring and predictable. I've not identified with the cast of characters less, because one of the first characters you meet is the tsundere class president ice princess, who does nothing but just she does everything you would expect her to. She's like, it's not like I wanted to help you anyway, Babaka, and she does like the hair flip, and she gives you cold shoulder, and it's
getting annoyed just hearing about this.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so tropey and boring, and I'm not feeling it. And for a visual novel, that is a critical failing. Like, you can't have a game that is all story.
Like, the strength of the visual novel should be that it has interesting writing, not like, this game has a lot of writing. Doesn't mean it's good.
Right, and I feel really bad for the localization team, because it's clear to me that they put effort into the game. Like, they worked with what they had, but what they had was a steaming pile of crap. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
it's honestly like one of the worst games I've played in quite a while. It is so boring, and I haven't even gotten to the reason why I really hate it, because the writing is bland, but it's not offensive. It's just not interesting or compelling in any way. What's really crappy is the battle system. So it has a battle system, which I actually didn't know before I played it, and you're exercising ghosts, and this the system is like you have this thing called the Ouija pad, and you have these really plain looking little squares, and it's a really minimalistic sort of thing, and it's like you see icons that represent each of your people and each of the you can see the environment, but you can't see the ghosts unless you place specific like EMF transmitters that can sense electromagnetic waves, which mean ghosts are there. I'm doing a bad job of explaining this because it's kind of hard to without seeing a schematic. But basically, the entire battle system is based around prediction and random guessing. So, because they're ghosts, you can't see them, which makes sense. But so it's turn-based, but everybody acts at the same time. You give your characters commands. You're like, okay, I want to go over here and hit this enemy. And then you execute. Everything happens at once. Your characters move. The ghosts move. You have to predict where the ghosts are going to be and hit them out, like when they're in that slot. If they bump into you, it stops your movement path and you get hit and you like lose your turn, basically. You only have a certain number of turns. You have a finite number. And the entire thing is just random guessing. Like, if you place certain traps on the field, you can see the ghost's possible movement range, but the best you can do is like have your characters kind of surround that area and each try to hit a portion of the ghost's movement range just in case they happen to move into that area. Like, it is so obnoxious. I cannot tell you. Like, I lose battles because I literally just guessed wrong.
It sounds like Unlimited Saga, where there's no actual tactical consideration. It's just like, well, I sure hope this works out.
There are some tactics in that before you begin a battle, you have a screen where you can set traps. Like, you can set traps that will damage the ghost or limit their movement range in some way. But I mean, it still comes down to there's nothing you can do aside from guess. Like, that's it. That's the end point of your strategy. You can plan around it as much as possible, but then you guess at where the enemies are going to be. And at least Unlimited Saga had a good soundtrack to back it up, because this game has a really boring soundtrack.
Now you have officially lost me.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. I didn't want to hate it so much. It looks really pretty. It has this. I don't know if you guys had ever seen any of the stuff. Like, I think the first game I saw that did it was Trinity Universe, but that style where you have like the 2D portraits that animate kind of minimally. Like, you'll have a character portrait that looks like it's just a static drawing, but their hair is kind of flowing in the wind.
Oh, yeah.
Or they'll like move their arms around a little bit and blink and stuff. And it looks really, really nice. But that's all it's really got going for it. Like, it also has tiny little cut-ins where sometimes the character will do a more dynamic animation, but they repeat a lot, so it's obvious that their budget was pretty limited, and they were like, let's just try to use these as much as possible. Like, there's a guitar player character who is just a guitar player, and like that's his entire personality. And the first time he appears, it shows him like make a riff on his guitar, and it looks really cool. And I was like, oh, what a neat cut-in! And then they use that same riff, that same cut-in like 4 times. Every time he plays his guitar, and it's like,
so all their budget went to that.
Yeah, so I'm not doing a really good job, I think, of explaining this game, but it's one of the more boring games I've played in quite a long time, and I can't wait to be done with it.
Look on the bright side. In 9 days, you'll be type zeroing.
Yeah.
Super excited about that.
Oh, Rob, can you tell everybody what you wrote on Facebook about Final Fantasy 15's demo?
All right. I said before that I would probably I would want to play Type 0 first and then the demo after, but now with all the hype and everybody getting all excited for the Final Fantasy 15 demo, I will probably play the demo first.
Who wants to take bets that Rob doesn't like it?
I don't think that's fair at all.
It's Rob, so.
I think you are going to find a few mechanics or a few wrinkles in mechanics that drive you insane.
With the 15 demo.
I do.
But this is coming.
Like, I think you're going to be like, well,
played it either.
No, I haven't played it. I'm just making a prediction. I'm making a prediction, and I'll admit I have no empirical evidence to back this up other than
patterns.
Well,
what's previous behavior?
I mean, yeah. So what you guys are saying is that I always find things to be critical about with games.
I'm not saying that that's not justified. I'm not saying that, for example, you're not wrong about Dark Souls 2 having a problem with the vertical detection. because you're not wrong about that.
True. But I do think you have, and I love you, and I respect you tremendously, and you're a great person. I think you have a tendency to fixate on little things and let them break the experience for you. And we've had this discussion before, so that's not like...
No, I think that's definitely true. What ends up happening is I start losing the forest through the trees. Like I start to focus on the individual aspects that really drive me up a wall. The problem is when a game is built around those aspects and I keep running into them. It's like what we talked about at the beginning of the show. If there's one section in a game that sucks, I can go, all right, I got to grit my teeth. I got to get through this, whatever. You got
Well, you like the Evil Within, so I mean, of course you can get through it.
right,
Because
but
the Evil Within has terrible sections and great sections.
right, and that was the example I was going to use, which is like, okay, in Dark Souls, I've played that game like 10, 15 times. Okay, you guys know that. I can grit my teeth and go, all right, it's the bed of chaos. I'm going to die a couple of times. I will grit my teeth, get through this, and forget that this ever happened because this section of the game sucks. The problem is when that section keeps happening, or when it's
So
like,
you...
okay, this didn't work the first time. Why are you doing it again? So the Evil Within is great when it's you versus one or two enemies, and then there are 4 or 5 parts in that game where you have to fight 30. And it's like, okay,
With the exception of that one part in the burning building.
I think that part is the worst part in the entire game.
I think that's one of the most exciting parts in the game. So that's what's funny is like, because I feel like you are just barely able to survive that sequence.
And when you play on hard mode, it is not barely survival, it's you have to get lucky. You have to get lucky with the number of times that they come down and the number of enemies that spawn on you, because you will die over and over again. And I was able to get through it just barely on normal. But what I'm saying is like the Evil Within puts you into the same situation that doesn't work over and over again. So it does the thing where it's like, wow, this wasn't fun the first time.
Let's do it again.
Why are you doing it to me again? Like, the
Why are
turret
you
section,
doing this to me?
the turret section in Dead Space. That wasn't fun the first time. What made you think that I needed to do it again?
We get to do it 3 times.
I think it's only 2, but I
Can't
just
remember.
I just remember it's
That part was dumb though.
yeah, it's like this is stupid. Like
It's like this is a horror game. I don't need to shoot asteroids.
why is this in this game? Like there is
Yeah.
nothing fun about this. So I think if the core gameplay is good and it's only a bad part of the game, I can look past it. It's when it's a core part of the game and maybe I have to do it over and over and over again that I'm like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. Dead Space is a perfect example. Dead Space 1 and 2 are fantastic games that have a couple rough spots that aren't very fun, but whatever, I can get through them. And then Dead Space 3 loses all of that and its core gameplay changes to include nothing but the rough spots.
Well, let me be fair, and not dogpile on you too. I have a tendency to do that sometimes too. Like, look at again. I bring this example up. I have been bringing it up for years. Star Ocean 3. That combat system, you have that sort of tracking where you attack and you run up. And if you're playing as Fate, you run up and you swing your sword down and up. And if the enemy's on the ground, you sort of swoosh in the air for like 2 seconds and you lose all control. There's nothing you can do. You can't hit enemies down, but they can hit you when you're down. And that broke the combat for me. It made me so angry to play that game that when I finally got to the end, like to the plot twist, I wanted to like punch the developer in the face.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's a minor part of it, and it is. But it's one of like again, it's not that I don't understand one small thing annihilating an experience for you, because in your head you just get filled with hate and rage when you think about it. And I am getting like, but I to bring us back around to 15, I'm just teasing you. But what I'm joking is that I could see you being like, oh yeah, the way Noctis teleports new weapons out as he attacks gives you a little bit of slowdown, and you get struck in between that. Because you don't like it when games have really detailed animation that is part of the combat windup, other than Dark Souls. Like, you don't like how, I'm climbing and I can't stop this climbing animation and I got hit while I was climbing.
Yeah. No, I'll agree with that.
And
Fair.
from what I've seen, this game absolutely has that.
Well,
It has the Noctis is winding up and you got hit. But on the other hand, it also has the, if you switch to the defensive thing, you'll teleport out of the way. So
Right.
I don't know. Let me put it this way. I want you to love it so we can all talk about how much we love it, but I'm preparing myself emotionally for you to not like it.
And see, I'm prepared emotionally that I'm going to like this better than I have liked any other Final Fantasy game for the past. When was Final Fantasy X released? 2001? I'm going to say that I will probably like this more than every Final Fantasy game that has come out since 2001.
For me, the most recent Final Fantasy I've played is 14, so I'm feeling pretty good about the series.
Well, that's an MMO. I don't include that. I don't include that, and I haven't played Type Zero yet, so that's on the table. But wasn't a big fan of 12. We know my thoughts on 13, and they decided to make 3 of those. I almost dropped the F-bomb. I had to stop myself. They decided to make 3 of them after I didn't like the first one. So okay, like I'm ready to love Final Fantasy again. I'm ready to see what they do, but they're making a very action heavy game. That's cool. I really hope they can pull it off because you know what? The last time I got really excited for a kind of developer to make a big time action game was Dragon's Dogma, and that game controls like absolute dog crap. So if I'm playing an action game that controls like dog crap, guess what? I'm not going to play it. Like I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. I don't think 15 is going to be Dragon's Dogma, but I have that Dragon's Dogma looms in the back of my mind with everything that I'm watching for 15, where I'm like,
It's PTSD right there.
I mean, you can have that is action combat done wrong, and it's like you were saying with Monster Hunter. I don't understand how people can like Dragon's Dogma. I don't get it.
Well, like I agree. I understand how people can like Monster Hunter, and I'm getting into that. I think part of it too is your expectation. Like sometimes you go into a game with the expectation of what you want the experience to be based on your understanding of it, and then it's not that, and you don't like it. It's sort of like when the first Fable came out and people gave it 2s because they're like, it's not what Molyneux promised.
I can't.
Fable 1 is a decent action RPG.
I can't plant a seed and watch it grow for 20 years.
Yeah, like if you go into Fable 1 expecting it to be an alright action RPG, you're going to be fine. If you go in expecting the greatest game ever made, which again, that's what he said it was going to be, then yeah, you're going to be disappointed.
But do we all agree that Dragon's Dogma was kind of poopy? Can we all kind of agree on that?
I didn't like it.
I just think that game's...
I don't want to tell anyone what they can and can't enjoy unless it's terrible tropey writing. But
right. Again, I'm super excited for 15. We're going to have it in our hands here in the next week. I'm ready to love it. And they've already said that it's a rough demo. I mean, there've been some reports out of PAX that the game's got frame rate problems. I mean, it's probably over a year away from release. I can live with that. I want to see what they're doing. What I want to see more than anything out of 15, and I think we're going to get it based on the previews that we've seen so far, I want to see a clear vision of what this game is, because I do not feel with Final Fantasy 12 or 13 they ever had a clear vision. I think with 12 it got...
Well, I think they came out and said that it didn't.
Right. I mean, 12 was clearly a muddled game that got ripped apart behind the scenes, and I would love to see a behind the music special on that. 13 was a story first, gameplay second, and they came up... It feels like they stuck that game together with, tape and paste to try to get something to work, and they had no clear vision of what they wanted. What I want to play out of this, when I play Dragon Age Inquisition, when I play Xenoblade, when I play all these big open world RPGs, which I think is what they're going for here, I see a clear vision of what they want the game to be. That's what I want to see at this.
I agree.
That will be the first step.
I agree completely, and that's actually, I wanted to talk about this yesterday because I live tweeted their PAX stream. I want to talk about why I'm excited for 15, because I think part of it is the people they're putting in front of cameras are Juan Hosmer and then the lead designer, and then I'm going to butcher his name, but Prasert Vityakarn, I think. They call him Sun, so that's much easier to say. But Juan Hosmer, first of all, says that when he thinks about designing this world, he talks about, he's the leader of the culture team. He's Malaysian, and he says, I want, when I go somewhere, when I travel, I say to myself, why is this like this? Why does this economy work this way? Why do people eat this kind of food? Why do they eat this kind of food? Is it because of how, the local ecology supports this herb being grown? Like, he's asking these questions. He's like, what generates the social construct in which people live this way? And then he brings up Back to the Future 2, which is his favorite movie. And oh my God, I'm just so down with that. And he says, when you think about that opening shot in Back to the Future 2, when Marty first goes to the future, you get this huge panning shot of Hill Valley. You get all this crazy stuff happening. Marty is like blown away by it, but everybody else is just walking around like it's no big deal because that's their culture. So it's like he's talking about how he wants you to go to towns and them not to just be like, yeah, you rested here and you bought stuff and you left. He's like, I want you to feel culture shock when you go to a town. Not like I can't get by here, but like, wow, there's culture here. Why is this like this? And, they're talking about all these things about humanity. Like, they want the four characters to sit down and camp and joke with each other. And like, they want the personalities of the character reflected in how they play. And Alexa Correa, I don't know how to pronounce her name well, sorry. She wrote a really great editorial on like male bro intimacy type things. Like she touched on the fact that we'd like to see more women in the game, but also that what they're trying to do is tell a story of basically, male friendship. And, they talk about little details in the combat. Like if Ignis is near you, Ignis is raised to be the counsel and like the support of Prince Noctis. So like if Noctis is about to get attacked, Ignis will like shout his name and run over and try to shield Noctis with his body. Or like Gladiolus taught Noctis how to fight. So he'll make a joke, be like, man, you're pretty good, Noctis. Who taught you how to fight? Like, these things where the way they play and the way they act is actually their character. They're not just saying Ignis is Noctis's counsel, so we're going to tell you that that's how it is. Rather, they are demonstrating it. So, like, you have these people. What's that?
I was going to say, I think that's a key difference from Final Fantasy XII. As much as I love Final Fantasy XII, but I recognize all the flaws in it. And one of the flaws, I think, is that in the non-Zodiac job system, so the regular Western version of the game, all of the characters can be built exactly the same way, and they have a little bit of predisposition towards certain stat builds. But they actually, I mean, like, there's really no difference at all. And I think that it's important in a game like FF15, I almost said 14, is that the characters actually, like, if they're going to define their personalities a certain way, I think it's important that it ties into the combat mechanics. So I like what you're bringing there.
No, absolutely. And like, I sort of have conflated two topics there with the combat, but the people leading this game, and I promise this is getting to your point, Rob, Hasmer and Sun are like discussing all of these things that they are like, we have this vision for what we want this experience to be. Not everybody agrees that should be the experience. People don't like the way that the party looks because they're all monochromatic colors, and that I think is just a relic of having been designed by Nomura, and now he's gone. But they spent money on these designs, they marketed these designs. That's how they look. I don't think that's their input, but you have these people asking interesting questions that create interesting experiences. They know what they're trying to make, and that's why I'm so excited for Final Fantasy 15, and why when people are like, boo, you know what? We haven't had a Final Fantasy other than 14 designed by Yoshida, who knew exactly what he was making, that be so focused and so long. Look at Final Fantasy X. Even if you hate Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy X knows what it's trying to do. Yeah. The combat system is trying to subvert 9 previous entries of active combat, or roughly, not all of them. It's trying to, now we have voice acting, so we're trying to make our camera angles more cinematic. We have a real-time camera, unlike the last 3, so we're trying to show you different framed of shots. Final Fantasy X knows what it wants to be. Final Fantasy XIV knows exactly what it wants to be, and that's why those games are so memorable. And so you have these people, Tabata and Sun and Hasmer, and I'm sure the rest of the team, they know what they're doing with Final Fantasy 15. You might not like what they're doing, and that's okay, because not everything should appeal to everybody.
Right.
But you want a focused experience? I'm excited because these people are telling me concrete, objective facts about what they want to create. Hasbro wants to create culture. He wants you to feel this world. They want to create, this dynamic of male intimacy that's reflected not only in the story but in the gameplay. And I think they're doing that.
Well, and now I want to jump in here a little bit because I agree with everything that you say. And with everything you said, and I hope that you're not categorizing me in like the hater quality here at all, and I don't think you are, but I just want the listeners to realize that no, I'm super excited for this game.
Yeah, no, I was just teasing you.
Right, and the vision thing is hugely important to me. This is going to sound like I'm going to go off on a tangent here a little bit, but I'm going to come back to it. But I have been sitting back for the past 6 months, so ever since E3, I have been watching the oncoming train wreck of the Order 1886. I watched, or 1866, whatever, 1886. I watched that train wreck coming. Because you guys can go back, listen to the E3 show, and remember my comments, which, I was maybe a little bit more forceful than I should have been off mic, but it was probably for a good reason. When I played that game at E3, I knew they were in trouble. And I'm not saying that Monday morning quarterback, and I'm not saying that to dance on anybody's grave or to say ha 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 I'm so smart. You guys know my policy. I love to be wrong on games. When I played
I
that
love
game
for
at
you to be wrong against too.
I waited 2 hours to play that game at E3, and I walked away going, this is a PlayStation 4 launch title. This game has no idea what it wants to be. Its mechanics are antiquated to an absurd degree. It has no clue what it's doing. It just knows it looks really, really good. This is a shell of a game that has been created around a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous engine. And I feel very strongly, you know, rightly or wrongly, that Final Fantasy 13 was kind of in the same category. So
Yeah.
I watched
13 at least has moments where it's fun though.
Yes, yes. No, and I can agree with that. But I saw this train wreck coming because everybody was sitting there saying, "Oh my God, The Order is going to be the greatest game ever. This is going to solidify your PlayStation 4 purchase. This is the reason why you bought a PlayStation 4." Blah 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 blah. And then it came out, and guess what? It wasn't very good because that game got completely lost in what it was. You remember when they first showed it, and it was going to be you versus werewolves? There are 3 werewolf encounters in the entire game, and 2 of them are QTEs.
Right.
That game had problems. Okay, what I see with Bloodborne and with Final Fantasy 15 and Type 0 HD is that these are games that clearly know what they are, they have a vision, and they are using the technology to reach that vision. That is why I am excited for these games. And I love the cynicism right now. Like, of course, the day after the order came out, it became, can Bloodborne live up to the hype? And I'm like, you want to know why Bloodborne can live up to the hype? Because it knows what it is. I was telling Steven the other night, like, I'm a little bummed out that it doesn't seem like they went as hardcore with the kind of jumps and multiplayer that I was hoping for. But you know what? They know what they're making and they're excited to make it. Final Fantasy 15, they are excited with what they're making. This is what they're going to do. These games have a clear vision to be a product and to be a self-contained idea. The Order is made to create a franchise. Our next game is going to be really good. Just you wait. We're going to use this technology and we're going to make something interesting. No, 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 no. From Software and Square Enix are making 2 good experiences now. They're making 2 games that are focused on, they're probably, I mean, Final Fantasy is clearly part of a franchise. You could argue that Bloodborne is as well too. It's its own little thing.
Well, it's like Sakaguchi said recently in an interview. He said, "I don't make games with the intention of making sequels."
Right. And that's where, the cynicism right now is very harsh, and I think rightfully so. In some respects, the Order was supposed to be this big, amazing thing, and guess what? We got a launch game a year and a half into the PlayStation 4 life cycle. Oops, sorry about that. But I think that there are going to be some really good games that come out right now, and so some of the eye rolling at Bloodborne and Final Fantasy 15 kind of pissed me off a little bit because I'm like, these are full experiences. These games know what they are, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. I mean, Final Fantasy 15 has looked more interesting in 30 seconds of gameplay than anything in the Order.
Yeah.
That's the game that people should be getting excited about. Not sitting here saying, "Oh man, next gen's already dead. This is really bad." No, these are the games to get excited about. This is what I'm getting. This is the reason I bought a new system. So I'm totally on board Final Fantasy 15. I'm ready to see it. I think, Steven, you hit on something very important there. I do feel like the character designs are left over from Nomura. Like, I think we kind of had to pick up all the scraps on the floor and make them work. I would love if they would go back and redesign the costumes at the very least, but
That's the thing is, again, yeah, I wanted to make that point. I don't think the characters have a problem. I think the problem is that in terms of design and aesthetics, I get that they're going for fantasy based on reality, and a lot of people from Insomnia dress that way. And maybe they'll justify it in the game. The problem is that visually, think about the box art for Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 10. Those all, or even 12. Whether or not you like those box arts, there is color all over them, and it's primarily because they're just pictures of the cast. Look at the cast of Final Fantasy 9. Every character is a different primary color. Quina is pink and white versus Zidane's blue and yellow, or versus Steiner's gray and like dark black. You have these people who visually there is a distinction. And so Yeah, in real life, people don't wear clothes that visually, distinguish. I mean, sometimes they do, but that it's not like you hang out with your friends and you coordinate what you're wearing, so that way, you all look different colors and
Wait,
you're
you don't?
visually interesting. I mean, I do, but I'm
I-
the aberration here.
Yeah.
But so I get the idea with the reality behind it. But the thing is, this is a video game. So when you have people running around, especially when they're all wearing black, even if you look at the details in their clothes, they're very detailed and unique looking. But again, black is a color that just sort of blends it all together as in terms of clothing. So like they all just sort of look like they're wearing black shirts and pants. And that's not necessarily the case. And that's why I wish that, the clothing had more visual color variety to it, because then you could identify them more readily. Because they all have fairly muted hair colors. There's no, none of them have blue hair. And, they all have normal faces.
Now, I'm going to ask a question, and this is going to sound like I'm trolling, but I don't mean to. Okay, this is how I feel as a gamer right now, because I've talked about how I'm like open world gamed fatigued right now. Like I have no desire to play another open world game. I know Steven maybe someday we'll play Saints Row 3 together, and it'll be a lot of fun. But I have played so many open world games, I don't care anymore. Like I've had enough. And now you have this growing subgenre, I think, of open world role playing games where you have like your Fallout, your Elder Scrolls, Xenoblade, Dragon Age, Inquisition, and now we just got Dragon Age Inquisition. We have Xenoblade Chronicles X, we have The Witcher 3, and we have Final Fantasy 15. I think there's enough room for these games, but how do they differentiate themselves enough? I mean, we've joked that yeah, there are a lot of fetch quests in Dragon Age Inquisition, but there's a lot of really good quests. I think there's going to be some fetch quests in Witcher 3. I mean, I very strongly believe that there's going to be some kind of fetch quest that maybe doesn't add enough to the story that we maybe want it to. Xenoblade had a lot of fetch quests, and I'm sure they're going to be in Xenoblade Chronicles X. Do we run the risk right now of having 4 very similar games coming out so close to each other? And there's the looming Fallout 4 announcement, which, put money on it. That's going to be Sunday night before E3. I think we're going to get a Fallout 4 announcement. Do you guys think that we could run into a problem here where there's not enough to differentiate these games? I mean, is this even a bad thing?
I definitely think that there is the risk of there being too much open world, because again, I love Dragon Age Inquisition, and I think the narrative explains these tasks well. Some of them are pretty, repetitive, and again, I know I'm sort of being hypocritical here because I hate checklisty type things, yet I've been playing Guild Wars 2 lately, and I'm actually really enjoying it, and the map exploration is great, but it is also a little checklisty. So I think for me, what I'm revising that statement to say, I don't hate checklists. I hate checklists that feel like Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft, and I'm going to rail on them because I hate that series. It's cynical, like we have to build this area to have 5 different towers. And that could even be the philosophy behind some of these other open world games. The differentiation for me is that in Dragon Age Inquisition, A, I was engaged in my characters. B, I was engaged in building those characters in terms of their gameplay efficacy. I was interested in the meta-narrative reason for me going and helping these places out because I'm making a name for the Inquisition. So yes, and I know, Kyle doesn't agree. He thinks these tasks are still menial, but he doesn't like the story. So that's where that is. I enjoyed the story of Inquisition. So for me, I was able to put context on these actions. And that's the thing too, is I was railing on Xenoblade side quests. I did all of them. And I kept saying, I told you guys as recently as the last show, oh, I'm not going to do it even. They're terrible. They're dumb. I did all of them. I did every side quest I could possibly do in one playthrough. Because once I started getting into the narrative, I was like, all right, yeah, I'm powering up Shulk and friends. Even if it's just that excuse in my own head, I still had fun because I was enjoying, and this is the last part, the combat. If you make me want to build these characters up and give me reasons to build these characters up, then yeah, maybe I will engage in this checklist content. Because if there's a meta-narrative or a narrative in my head that I can create, and the combat is supporting me wanting to do this content, like if the content itself is fun, then I don't mind doing it. Because in Assassin's Creed, going and climbing towers is not fun. Sneaking and doing weird broken stealth crap is not fun. The individual actions that you do that make up content in Assassin's Creed, and I'm using content in the most cynical way I can in that sentence, is not fun. It's soulless. Whereas in a game like Xenoblade, even though there are sort of menial fetch quests, which again, to be honest, they're sort of, you just do them as you're doing everything else in the area anyway, and exploring, it's worthwhile. It's enjoyable. You know, the game is its own reason for having this content. It's fun to do killing quests in Xenoblade because you're doing other stuff. You're seeing cool environments. You're seeing this unique, interesting take on a world that is two giants. And so experiencing that is part of the fun. So I think there is room for this, and the way they do that is by justifying why there's there. It's okay if you're going to have checklist content. In theoretical principle, I don't like it. But if you can justify it and make it fun, then I'm okay with it. And again, I'm sort of really dogging on Assassin's Creed, and I know a lot of people like that, and I apologize if it sounds like I'm crapping all over your taste. I find that series is the pinnacle of soulless, cynical, it exists for the sake of existing, and our core mechanics are not good. So doing all of these things with it aren't fun. It's sort of the complaint you have with Infamous, Rob. You don't find the core mechanics good enough to warrant doing fetchy type things. I actually do, but I appreciate where you're coming from with that. If it's not fun to do anything and to do the most basic action in the game, combat, the most basic action in Xenoblade in Dragon Age is fun. So, of course, I want to go do things that get me into more combat. And that's how I think that these games can all differentiate, and they seem to be. Xenoblade X, Witcher, Final Fantasy, they all have these interesting combat systems and other things going on that make me want to engage in this, what would on the surface be checklisty content.
Good job, Stephen. I applaud that description. I agree with every word.
Okay.
Including I don't like Assassin's Creed for the exact reasons that you outlined.
I still think Assassin's Creed 2 was fine. That was a good game.
Again, that might have, I don't want to say that was before they were cynical, but Assassin's Creed 2 was a lot fresher. So at that point, it wasn't a thing that they had, turned into a formula.
Right. And I think it's going to be a very interesting game of the year deliberation when we get there, because we're going to have some really big heavy hitters.
Wow, that is a good point. I just forgot. We have The Witcher, a Final Fantasy, a new Xenoblade.
Well, we're going to have Type 0. I don't think we're going to have 15.
No, that's what I mean. And Type 0 is a great game. Of course, considering I think Game Informer and like 3 other sites did a what are you most excited for this month, and they didn't even list Type 0. So I'm guessing Type 0 is going to get brushed under the rug.
It's going to...
I'm also calling it now. It's going to get 8s.
They're just, everybody's focused on the demo. It's just like...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's quite to the same level as Metal Gear Solid Zone of the Enders, but
that's a whole other level, because Zone of the Enders was barely a game, and that was a 2-hour tech demo.
Zone of the Enders 2 was fantastic.
Two is phenomenal.
I thought Zone of the Enders 1 was fun for the 30 seconds I played it.
It's just 2 hours long.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think the demo is going to kind of shine a little bit brighter, which is a little disappointing. I'm certainly excited to play Type 0.
Well, you know what I think it is? And even they said in their PAX stream, they were like, we read a lot of people who were just buying Type 0 to play the demo, and that's okay, but we really would like you to play Type 0 as well. They're like, hey, this is a game that we put a lot of effort into, and it's a great game. The problem is that you have Type 0, which we sort of is not an unknown element. People have said Type 0 is good, even though, again, I maintain it's going to score 8s. People know it's good. There's no mystery with Type 0. We know, oh, yeah, this game is good. People wanted to play it, and they did this with it. 15, everyone's like, what the hell is this thing? And it's not like Duke Nukem Forever, where, that came out and it was awful.
Yeah, and this is also not a game that's been in full development for 10 years. This is a game that has been...
in the consciousness for 10 years,
yes,
but not...
exactly. It was not in full development, so this is not a Duke Nukem Forever type scenario, but the problem is that everybody will view it as a Duke Nukem Forever type scenario. Oh my god, Final Fantasy 15's been in development for, a decade. No, it hasn't. It has been in the concept stage for probably about 8 years, and then it finally started to move forward. I mean, that's just the way it is, and here it is, and it looks pretty damn excellent, and I'm certainly excited for it. I just can't wait for when Kyle and I have to be put into a room and we're going to have to fight about Bloodborne versus Witcher 3, because that's the argument that we have been waiting to have again for 4 years.
But those aren't comparable at all, though.
But it goes back to Game of the Year.
It's going to happen. It's just like with Dragon Age.
No, it's going to go back to Game of the Year, Dark Souls versus Witcher 2. And there's still... That still has not been put to rest in my mind.
In that case,
an open debate.
In that case, it's because we had people going, well, I've only played one of these, but Dark Souls sounds like a kind of game I wouldn't like, so I vote Witcher.
Well, I think Witcher 2 was a great game. It really was, and I think it got a hell of a lot better the further it went. But I think we had some very strong voices in the Dark Souls camp, and we were not heard. But that's okay. That's part of what's fun about Game of the Year is that sometimes you don't even know what's going to happen. I mean, if can we have a little behind the curtain here? Who was the guy who advocated for Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD to win Remake of the Year? Who was the guy?
Other than Steven? Or
Who was the one that did a recount on the vote and it
Derek,
ended up?
Rob wants you to say, Derek, Rob would like you to say Rob.
yeah, well, I know that, but
Yeah, that was me because I was the one sitting there going, look, I love Valkyria Chronicles, but let's be honest here. 2.5 is ridiculous. Like, it is 2 full games and the narrative of another game. It's kind of got to win. Like, there's no way it can't win. And everyone was like, "Yeah, okay, that's pretty good." And then I had to put on the message board, "I can't believe I just advocated for Kingdom Hearts. I feel like I need a shower."
I can't wait till we're recording about Kingdom Hearts 3.
You mean in 3 years?
I think we'll be recording about it in like 2.
honestly, Kingdom Hearts 3 is completely removed from my mind until Final Fantasy 15 comes out. Like
I feel like Kingdom Hearts 3 was more real until we saw Final Fantasy 15 because they actually showed like something, and then it's like, nope, 15's coming out first.
Well, you know what's funny is Square Enix, like, remember when Kingdom Hearts 2 came out, they were like, we announced KH2 too soon.
Oh yeah.
And then they're like, we shouldn't do that again. And then they sort of did it again. But in this case, they did it again because people were like, is it ever coming?
Well, it was also a big deal with the new consoles. Like, it was huge to announce that, you know.
Well, and they've also said we're going to see stuff from Kingdom Hearts 3 this year, so.
Yeah. How about that Final Fantasy 7 remake? Is that gonna...
Is it going to happen? I couldn't tell you if it's going to happen. I think never.
I think 7 might be done. I think 7's kind of the redheaded stepchild that's just been beaten to death at this point, which is a real shame because I do love 7 and all of its, bat crap bonkers zaniness. Like, that game is so 90s, like, it hurts. It's like Evangelion all over again. Like, this thing's
It's very much a product of its time.
yeah, this thing spiraled completely into nonsensical hilarity, and then Square Enix spent the better part of just a decade, almost 2 now, making more and more titles with Final Fantasy VII in the title, and actually diluting what made that game so special in the first place.
Speaking of which, G-Bike never came out here, did it? And it's supposed to still.
Yeah, and that frustrates me. Although I would really like it if they just made G-Bike a minigame in 14.
Yeah.
Might as well. You got the gold saucer for it now. I mean,
Right?
Yeah. Well, people have been asking about snowboarding, actually, and Yoshida's like, I like snowboarding, so maybe I'll add that.
so place your bets. When are we going to get the full release of 15? I'm going to say summer next year.
I'm going to say, like, early spring next year. Because I think... speaking of... Okay, give your answer first, but I also want to know if you guys think Persona 5 is actually going to come out this year. Because now I'm thinking no.
Ooh.
I think maybe in Japan at the end of the year.
I could see, like, December, like, first week of December, Japan.
If they're localizing it fast, I mean, that's the thing, is that we don't have to typically wait for localizations like we used to, back in the olden times where, we got, I can't even think of a bad localization part right now, but I know they're all there. But I think if they are working on the localization of Persona 5 in tandem, which would be nice.
Sometimes we get fast localizations. Other times we get Bravely Default and Xenoblade.
Well, no, Xenoblade was a whole other issue, which was, it's out everywhere else but the territory that really wants it.
I think every territory really wanted it.
Right, but it was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was released in Europe, a year before we got...
Long before U.S.
Yeah, I mean, it was
No
already...
announcement either for a really long time.
Yeah, and it had been fully localized. Like, it was done.
Thanks,
That's why
Project
that
Rainfall.
pissed me off so much, because it was like, it exists in a fully playable form in English.
Yeah.
No.
And that one Nintendo guy who became the bane of everyone when he was like, we have no plans to localize in the U.S.
Yeah, he was, like, going to be killed. Also, this is, what are we coming up on? We're coming up on, like, the 1 hour, 40-minute mark. I want this to be a thing in every podcast until it finally happens. This is my open plea to Square Enix to please release Dragon Quest VII on 3DS in the West. Please, for the love of God.
They will, but Yeah.
Please, please, please. I will build churches in your honor.
Square, we will happily buy Theater Rhythm Dragon Quest if you release actual Dragon Quest
I will
games.
buy Theater Rhythm Dragon. I still need to buy Theater Rhythm. I still need to do that.
I think you would actually really enjoy Theater Rhythm.
I
It's really
liked
easy
it.
to chill with it.
I liked it when I played it at E3, and it kind of got me all nostalgic. Like I was kind of like, oh, I remember these tunes.
I started my project of triple S'ing everything, and it is going quite swimmingly, although it also is time consuming.
Are you playing the Dark Souls of Theater Rhythm? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, he is.
I am playing the Dark Souls Theater Rhythm.
Oh boy, oh boy. So yes, I would really like. I keep saying it over and over again that I would love to get Dragon Quest 3DS here in America. Dragon Quest 7 3DS, because I really want to play that. I really, really want that. And we're getting Dragon Quest Warriors or Dragon Quest Heroes. Sorry, Dragon Quest.
Yeah, didn't you say that you thought that wasn't going to come out here, or no?
I think I said that. You know, I probably did say that I didn't think it was going to come out here, and Square Enix just continues to baffle me with their decisions. I'm guessing because they don't. That obviously doesn't have as much to localize as Dragon Quest 7.
Right. Yeah, that game is
That game
7
is huge.
extremely text heavy. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, one guy at Square Enix was saying it would take them upwards of a year to localize 7.
I just don't think they're going to do it. I don't think it's going to be a good enough. It wouldn't be a commercial success for them, and that kills me because I love Dragon Quest and I'd love it to come here, but
it really bothers me too because it seemed like they were going to do it because there was a trademark for kind of how they do their like Sentinels of the Stars. Yeah, there was something that sounded very Dragon Quest and seemed to play into 7 a little bit, and it kind of looked like the planets were going to align. But I think they've been so snake bit on Dragon Quest, like they.
I actually think. I think that. Well, occasionally. I don't think. No, you don't think, sir? No, I don't. Never. I think. I actually think we are going to see that game. I think it's going to be another one of those cases where they actually end up doing it for the goodwill more than the fiscal outreach. And I know it sounds crazy to say a company would do that, but Square Enix is very conscious of their image right now.
Yeah.
Very conscious of it. And they've been passing around that survey that's like, what do you want? And it's, everyone on Twitter is like, Dragon Quest, even though I just want a Xenogears remake. But that's what I want. 7 doesn't need a remake. Xenogears does. But I think I actually
my
think
brain is melting right now. I don't know how to comprehend that.
I think we're going to get DQ7. I think they are going to be better about releasing those here. They haven't been in a while, but I don't know why. I feel like we are going to get that game.
Didn't 9 sold very well, didn't it, in America? Like, it sold fine.
No.
I think it's tough because they want. It's one of those things like, this is so popular here, why can't we make it super popular over here? You know what I mean?
It's sort of like how Metroid does way better here than it does elsewhere.
Yeah. And it just, I think you're right on the consciousness part of Square Enix. Like, they're realizing that they kind of, the last console generation, I think it's fair to say it was rough.
They're realizing the mammoth force of positive opinion, especially with social media around. Like, it's still funny for people to go, oh, Square Enix, they're nickel and diming us, but that is slowly changing, I feel.
Yeah.
People are slowly like, wait a minute, they are doing what we want.
Well, and a Final Fantasy release used to be an event. Like, that was what everybody got out of the way of. It wasn't Call of Duty. It was like, oh man, Final Fantasy, 8 is coming out September 9th, the same day as the Dreamcast. Have fun with that. Like,
except Square Enix, they didn't get out of the way, and then they're like, oh, oops, Final Fantasy 8 spent all of Xenogears' money.
Yeah, but it's like it used to be a real event, and I will say that I think the past 2 Final Fantasy games with Lightning Returns and Final Fantasy 13-2, those kind of were like, yeah, they kind of happened. Not a whole lot of excitement. Maybe that says something more about the shifting tone in video games. But then 14 came out, and that was a BFD, and now Heavensward
just hit 4 million.
Yeah,
it's not, like it's one of the only MMOs other than WoW.
Love it.
Yeah, it's like, look at ESO went free to play. World of Warcraft, I mean, that's going to be a gargantuan giant forever. But like, look at how many games tank in that space, and they're not hitting WoW numbers, but they're hitting insane numbers for themselves.
Yeah, and it's a subscription based. They're the one subscription one that has survived besides.
Well, you know what?
Warcraft.
it's like I said months ago. Yoshida goes, someone says, "How dare you charge a subscription fee in this era of free to play?" And he's like, "When you make a game that's free to play, you create a game for which there are ways you can monetize. It's not I'm creating an experience first, which people are paying for. It's I'm creating a content farm that I can monetize costumes. I can monetize, here's an XP booster.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
Dragon
I've been
Ball.
playing Guild Wars 2, and I like that. But again, that game has a lot of like, you bought an XP booster, or you bought a charge to change your hairstyle. Final Fantasy 14 has like a Fantasia potion, and it has like premium stuff like server transfers. But by and large, by subscribing to Final Fantasy 14, you know you're getting a bunch of new stuff to do every 3 months.
Well, I think with Square Enix kind of learning, and we've been very positive on them for the past year. That gives me hope that maybe Capcom can do the same thing. I know Steven thinks I'm nuts, but
I'm not very optimistic about Capcom. Right
we got the Resident Evil remake, and I never would have thought that was going to happen, and it seems to have done well for them. Maybe they'll listen. Maybe they'll see the Mighty Number 9 numbers when that finally gets released, and
I don't know. I'm not sure there's anything. Well, I mean, there are things Capcom could do to win back my favor. They won't do those things. That's the problem.
I would have
I
said
also
that.
still think Mighty Number 9 looks like crap, and I'm surprised.
Whoa!
I agree. Mighty Number 9 did not visually live up to what the concept art. Like, I really hope that the game is fun because it is ugly as balls.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like that game
That's a
has
really simplified. I mean, like I've had various thoughts about Mighty Number 9 over the last how long it's been since it was in production. So like a year and a half, and I started out really optimistic, and my opinion has waxed and waned. But as of right now, like the really reductionist version of my feelings about Mighty Number 9 is just it looks like garbage. I just think
it looks like a free to play mobile game.
Yep.
Like it's like flat textures and bland colors and effects. Like it just looks cheap. It doesn't like Inti creates gorgeous 2D artwork, and this is not reflective of their talent.
Yep.
Wow.
I hope that maybe they can polish it up with some lighting and make it look a little better. And again, if the game plays great, fine. It's like Mega Man Powered Up or Mega Man Maverick Hunter X. It's just
that was perfect. Like that Powered Up was super fun. So was Maverick Hunter X, and those were the same kind of like engine, like the 2.5D engine thing happening.
And they were sort of ugly, but they were fun.
Yeah, but they still looked better than Mighty Number 9. I like the style of both of those better than I like 9 because I hate like the engine it's running on is just butt ugly to me. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow. Apparently, I need to go
really
look more.
bugs me.
I gotta go look more at Mighty Number 9. Wow.
Adore Mega Man like to the ends of the earth, and I feel like this was their attempt at like rebranding Mega Man for new generation and launching a new series, and I feel like it just crapped upon all of my hopes and dreams, and I don't know how well it's going to be received, but I feel like if it's not well received, they'll do the exact same thing that they did with Resident Evil and be like, well, people don't want Mega Man, so guess we're not going to make another one ever again. Like, no, just because you botched the hell out of this game, that's why we don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope it's fun.
Inti creates, but still.
Visually, I feel like they've sort of flubbed it, and I do not like the whole. Woo, we go make contracts for merchandise and a cartoon and all this stuff. It's like, why don't you make a game that's good first?
Yeah.
Let's get some more money for voice acting.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry I brought up Mighty Number 9. I thought it looked okay. Jeez, maybe
hire somebody
wrong.
from the maybe you could take some of that money and hire somebody from the Ridiculous Museum to get rid of those graphics. I don't know.
Jesus. Well, I mean, I would just like to see Capcom kind of figure it out. I've been on such a big Resident Evil kick lately, like replaying it on my Vita and playing the remake and playing 2. And I'm like, man, these games still hold up. They're still really fun. And they also have something that I want to spend more time talking about it on maybe a future podcast because I think it's a real big discussion that we could have. It plays into why, like, Alien Isolation, I never got into it. I am so sick and tired of games telling me to go somewhere and press a button to continue the story. Like, go here because I told you to. Like,
press X to Jason.
Well, no, it's not press X to Jason so much as it is you need to go to this room because something that is not even part of the gameplay, like Dying Light did this too. Like you have to get to the top of the tower because then your character will pull out his radio and talk to somebody, and that will keep the narrative going. Like when I'm playing Resident Evil and it's like, wow, I need the crank because I need to get into this one room. Oh, I found the crank. Now I need to go back to the room. Like, it is creating reasons for me to do what I'm doing in the world that makes sense with the world that is created. I actually think the Souls franchise is really good about this too. Like, you get a key and that key unlocks this part of the room that you have to get to. Like,
Well, it's like I said earlier with give me reasons to do this content that are both supported from the gameplay standpoint and from a narrative standpoint.
right. And I think games have gotten really. I can't put my finger on what it is that did it, but like I think maybe the Batman games have done a really good job of maintaining this, but give me reasons for why I'm going to these areas in your world other than to continue the narrative.
Yeah, because reason.
Yeah, and it's a really hard subject to talk about, I think, but I'm just really fed up with I'm following my map because that's what's telling me to do something. Like I can't tell you half the stuff I did in Skyrim because the pointer said go here and press X when you get here to, poison this or pick up this or throw this switch. Like it doesn't hold any meaning for anything that I'm doing in the game.
You know what doesn't hold any meaning are the 4,000 things I keep doing in Animal Crossing. And I can't stop.
And
I've been playing it the whole time we've been recording.
Animal Crossing is a unique beast, though.
Animal Crossing is the ultimate waste your time in life simulator that I just never want to stop playing. It's like, oh, yeah, what'd you do today? Oh, I caught a butterfly. I found some apples.
You sure did.
I went to an island and listened to a sea shanty.
Sounds like
I got stung by a bee and then looked ridiculous for a week. And then a hippo person came over and told me I had crappy art. I must continue.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. We ready to move on to news, people?
Sure.
Yusu?
A lot of discussion this week. I think we're all ready for new games to come out. I think the next couple episodes are going to be pretty spectacular.
Well, my reviewable of Type 0 is en route at this exact moment. So the next time we record, I will, at that point, it'll be 2 weeks. I will probably have beaten and reviewed it. So,
Yep, we'll probably do an episode right before Bloodborne comes out, and then we'll do an episode after because I want to have a whole episode devoted to 15 and Type 0.
I think there's going to be a lot of chatter on 15. And
Yeah.
15 is the kind of game that I know some of our old hats are going to hate. They're going to be like, this is different. And again, it's okay that you know what you want in a game, and you should know what you want. I feel like 15 is going, like every entry in the series, is going to be like, this is not what I wanted Final Fantasy to become. And that's an acceptable critique.
Yeah.
I strongly doubt I'm going to be one of those people.
I'm excited.
I'm mad excited. Steven, do you want to talk about your studio visit for Guild Wars 2?
Probably that's not a bad idea. I forgot that we did that. Yeah, that was the. We occasionally get to go and see games before they're out. I went and visited ArenaNet in Bellevue, Washington, to see Heart of Thorns, the new Guild Wars 2 expansion, a game which I have gone on record numerous times saying was my biggest MMO disappointment ever. And since that visit, which was wonderful, the game was good enough that it made me reinstall Guild Wars, and I have now convinced two of my friends, Mike from the website, I guess, who's also my friend, but I just wanted to specifically say him because you know him, my roommate, and my brother to all start playing Guild Wars 2 with me again. So what I saw was pretty good. It's just a lot of passionate people there, and we talked about the game. They're trying to do what they did with the original release, where they are trying to subvert MMO genre conventions. So there's no new tier of gear, for example, like most MMO expansions. Here's a new tier of gear. You killed the bunny rabbit. It is now better than the Lord Slayer God Beast weapon that you had after 4,000 hours in the early game. But don't worry, this new bunny sword has way better stats. There's none of that. There's also no raised level cap. What they have is a system called Masteries. And in my interview with Matt Werfel, we talked about, I said, this reminds me of Zelda or Metroid, and they said that's our inspiration. So this new area is the Maguma Jungle, and it's a very vertical zone. And rather than leveling up, now you go around the map and you collect skill points, sort of like you do existing in the game, for your masteries. And the first mastery you get is a glider, which lets you fly around. And quite literally, you can fly around. So there'll be like hidden platforms underneath the main part of the continent that you can fly to. And there'll be like a secret quest there or something. Or as an example, I did a Wyvern boss fight with a bunch of other people who were demoing it. And I got to, as the new class, fly in on a glider onto a Wyvern and fly down into the ground and smash him with a hammer. And it was awesome. But so you get your glider, and then as you get mastery points, you'll get, for example, there's mushrooms in the environment. You get mastery points that allow you to use those for traversal, so you can bounce on them. And those are just some of the examples. But the idea is that this mastery system can be extended to all future content, and even some of the old stuff, where rather than the expansion just giving you 10 more levels of arbitrary, abstracted numerical strength to get, you are getting new ways to interact with the content. So, for example, now they can create missions where you have to fly around and do stuff. They can create missions where you have to grappling hook up to something, or you have to repel, or do these different types of mastery things. So you're sort of getting, it's almost like in Zelda or Metroid, where you get new ways of traversing the environment, and that opens up new parts of the environment for you to explore and play. And this sort of gets into what I was saying earlier, where the question might be, why would I do those things if I'm not getting new gear? And with Guild Wars, what I'm finding replaying it, and again, this could change in a week because I'm still pretty low level, but what I found in the demo is that their content is not about get to 80 and then raid. It's about, this is a world we want you to explore and have fun as you're playing it. And Rob, you've played it, and you thought it got a little old, and I could see that complaint. They have changed it a lot since we played, though. Like, the way you get skills is drastically different now. But it's fun in and of itself. The things you're doing are cool. Like at level 15, I was wandering around a swamp, and all of a sudden, I saw a group of players. I'm like, hey, what's going on over here? And they're like, oh, check this out. All of a sudden, like a demon from hell comes up out of the ground and starts opening hell portals. And we're doing this quest where we're having to run around and close these portals before we get overrun by demons, while this giant, crazy shadow behemoth is railing on us.
So the open world events are still happening, and then they're being merged with new masteries, so that, like, with the masteries, so that you have new ways of going about it, accomplishing like constantly happening objectives.
Correct, exactly. So that's the idea, is that they're with this mastery system going forward, because they do their living world stuff where it's sort of like 14, where they do the big content patches, but they have, it's called the living world. It's an ongoing storyline with new areas. So now when they create this new content, instead of going in and just getting new gear, the idea is that you're going to go in and do new things. And I really like that approach. And I can't tell you how it's going to turn out, because like I said in my preview and in my interview, I worry that that is not enough to sustain you over the course of a lengthy MMO. But on the other hand, they don't know yet. They're still making it. So it's definitely something I'm curious about. It was good. What I played was good enough that it made me go back to a game that I had permanently written off and convince 5 people to buy it.
Yeah, and especially if it's good enough to take you away from 14 for a while.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, now my life just sucks because I'm split between trying to fight Odin and play Triple Triad and trying to collect skill points in Guild Wars, so my life sucks.
So
but
hard. Yeah.
It is. And then so they also introduced, I got to play their new PvP mode, which is another big part of why I played, because I like PvP in an MMO. I don't like when it's sort of random and chaotic. I like when there's learning and strategy and understanding mechanics involved. And Stronghold is basically a MOBA, but with MMO characters. And so it's this really cool back and forth where the two teams are trying to get into a base and kill the Lord. There are 3 gates between, and there are NPC guards. And so one person can run supply, and you use your supply to summon NPCs that walk down the lanes, just like a MOBA, archers or door breakers. There are also hero units you can get that are really great at fighting lords. So other than just 2 players smashing into each other in waves, you're trying to complete this objective, and it's really fun. We played 3 matches of it there, and like I said, everywhere else, I took a picture of it. I had the highest score on my team. But it's this really fun sort of back and forth strategic tug of war mechanic where, like, people I didn't even know, we were like shouting strategy to each other. It was cool. Like, oh, do we need any archers? Or what do we get up front? Do we need more door breakers? It was really fun, and again, a big part of why I started playing Guild Wars 2 again. So yeah, if you wrote off Guild Wars because you played it a while ago, I can't promise you that you will like it in the long run, because again, I'm still just getting back into it. But they have changed quite a bit in terms of how the game presents its content to you and how your character develops. As an example, now you collect traits by doing quests throughout the world like you did in Guild Wars 1, as opposed to before where you just sort of unlocked them. So I'm having a great time with it again. It's hard to say if it'll pan out, but at the very least, the expansion got me excited to try it because they are clearly like Yoshida. They listen to their players, not just Yoshida, like the team that makes 14. I hate to be reductive. So it might be worth trying it again, and it's $10 for the next 2 days. So who knows? By the time this is out, that'll be too late. But another cool part about that visit, I don't want to be too lengthy. I got to visit the sound studio. Apparently, I was the only nerd that asked to talk to sound people, and they
Ripping RPG fan music, right?
Right. What's up? So I met McLean Deemer and James Ackley, the sound director and one of the composers, because they used to have Jeremy Soule, who contracted out, but he no longer writes for them, and now they have in-house composers. And so they gave me a tour of their Foley room, which was awesome. They showed me like a broken television they used to make the sound of fairy dust and ice. They showed me a violin that they used to make like murder sounds of monsters. They sent me a cool photo of the composer spinning a toilet around and smashing it into the ground for a certain sound effect. So it was really fun as a sound geek to get to see that stuff. And then I interviewed them, which you should check all this stuff out on the feature page. And they also let us debut the theme song to Heart of Thorns. We're the only ones that have that. And, it's cool music. So, yeah, it was a good experience, both from a meeting interesting people and talking to passionate people who really believe in their game. And also candid, because I was pretty honest when I was there. I was like, I was pretty bummed by Guild Wars 1, and I haven't played in a while. And they were like, oh, you should try it. We've changed it a lot. And, that could be lip service to an extent, but the fact is I did try it, and they're right. They did change a lot. So I feel good about that team, and I'm certainly interested in Heart of Thorns. We'll see where it goes. I would definitely say, though, if it's been a while, try it again.
Yeah, it's nice to see a solid alternative to WoW and 14. I mean, I love 14 so much.
I sure do too.
I don't see myself taking time away, but it sounds.
And that's actually, yeah, that's actually a good way to look at it too. Guild Wars 2 is really different from 14, and that's why I can entertain playing them both. Because in 14, I have a very different set of concerns for what I'm doing. And again, I don't do the relic quests. I sort of show up, do the story missions, play Triple Triad, and mess around with my friends, and then I sign off. I have negative interest in grinding light or Atma.
Yeah, the relic quests are awful. I mean, they're doable for really hardcore people, and I've been going back and forth and putting time into those quests, but they just stress me out. I feel like I was happier when I had resolved to not do it, and then I started playing really heavily again because of Triple Triad, and I was like, maybe I could do. No, I really shouldn't do this.
Yeah,
if John was here, he'd just tell us to play Rift again.
He would.
Just play Rift.
He'd be wrong though. Rift sucks. Sorry, John, but we're right.
Well.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing is, again, I don't mean to tease on Final Fantasy XIV because I love that game, and this is sort of endemic to that style of MMORPG. I have little interest in, oh, look, my weapon has 2 more stats, and now if the parser reads my DPS faster, the static group will let me run Coil more. No, I have zero interest. You know what I'll do? I'll wait till they make Coil easier, and then my friends, I'll run it with them, and they'll teach me how to fight it. Fine. And that's sort of what appeals to me in Guild Wars, is that Guild Wars is structured from the ground up, that it is not a gear treadmill, and that skill in the content is different from time invested purely for gear. And again, not that that's not a good, a thing that people enjoy. It's just, it's not for me personally.
Yep, I gotcha. Okay, well,
let's remind Rob to come back now that we're talking.
No, I am here.
Oh, okay.
I liked Guild Wars 2. I played a lot of it, but it didn't hold my attention as long as I wanted it to. But it's still a good game.
Even your flamethrower, I remember.
I loved my flamethrower. It was a lot of fun.
Well, as long as we're on the MMO train right now, I should mention that Final Fantasy XIV had a really big presentation, or had a big presence rather, at PAX East, which is still happening. But they were there yesterday. There was a presentation for the expansion Heavensward. They went over a bunch of the previously announced info, and then they finally gave us a release date, which was the big thing. It is going to be coming out on June 20. Oh, I should have this open. Sorry, June 23rd, and then early access on the 19th. That's going to be for PC, PS4, PS3, and then Mac, which is releasing alongside the new expansion.
At last.
On top of that, they announced that they're going to have a benchmark coming out next month that's going to have like a 7-ish minute video that you can watch. Check out your PC's performance, see how it runs the client. And this is for the new client, I think.
Yeah, the new DirectX 11 client.
Yeah, the DirectX 11 client that has better rendered water and nicer textures and better mapping and stuff.
And in theory, it should also have better performance.
Yeah, which is really important. That's awesome.
Heck yeah.
So they're releasing that next month. Besides the video, it's also going to have a character creation benchmark so that you can check out the new race, the Aura, and see all the different options for them. So that'll be fun. And then pre-orders are going to open for that on March 16th, which will be likely after this episode releases, so you'll have time to go down and get your copy secured. I, for one, I know I'm going to go with the collector's edition. I know that you aren't as big on physical stuff these days, Steven, but I want that. I think the dragon statue might be a little superfluous, but I care about, like, you get a Kane minion. That's so cool, like FF4.
Yeah, for me, it sort of depends on what the physical is, because, you know, I'm looking over at my stupid Amiibo collection and my stupid Kingdom Hearts 2.5 collector's edition, and I feel a sense of delight. So there are some physical collectibles that get me.
Have you stolen Derek's Shulk Amiibo yet?
No, I actually have a Shulk Amiibo ordered, though. I'm
okay.
definitely going to get him, they say, by the end of May. So after that, other than Game & Watch, my collection will be complete.
Nice. But yeah, so Heaven's Word finally has a release date. Really excited about that because, like we just said a few minutes ago, still actively playing that. Looks really good.
The Machinist looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm totally into that. I loved the Puppet Master in Final Fantasy XI, and it was a mechanically fascinating job to me. It wasn't super potent, but I loved the idea behind it. So I like that Machinist's thing is you'll actually be able to equip scopes and sights and grips on your guns. You'll be able to deploy turrets that have various support and attack functions. Like it sounds really unique and cool. So I'm down for that.
I'm also down for that.
Heaven's Word's coming out. It's looking real good. Moving on, Atlas announced that their launch edition of Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor 2 is going to have some additional stuff. Pretty much just along with the game and soundtrack that it was announced to have already, there's going to be a decal set. They'll have clear decals that have like the logos for their organization, JIPS, within the game, which is like... Oh, some stat just went up.
My excitement for that collector's edition.
Yeah, I guess so. What's the... Nerve, Jesus. I was having a really hard time thinking of the name of the organization in Ava. So it's like Nerve. They have JIPS, and they have that logo. So if you want to be a cool guy and put it on your car, you can do that. It's not going to cost any extra. It just comes with the game when it comes out on May 5th. So cool stuff.
I love the first one. I never played the second one, so I'm super stoked to play it.
And Rob, I told you already, I think you're going to love it because it does draw so many parallels to Ava. I think if you're going to play either of them, I think you should go for the second one. I think you'll like it a lot.
I have the first one on my 3DS. It's just a question of, do I have enough time to
Oh my god, you should play it. It's so good.
I know, everybody says it's really good, so I should probably give it a little bit of time to check it out.
Yeah.
Of course, maybe you should also play Shadow Hearts too.
Oh, you jerk. Oh, it begins again.
Every episode. You need to live that shame until you play it.
I agree.
I'm never going to let you go. Never going to give you up? I don't know. Never going to let you go.
Stop it, Rick Astley. Moving on.
And lots of Final Fantasy stuff today. The Final Fantasy X 10.2 HD remaster on PS4 got a release date. It is coming out in May. It's the 12th in North America, 14th in Japan, and the 15th in Europe. And it comes with a collectible desktop calendar in the US and a steelbook in Europe.
Is anybody feeling a little...
I'm not getting that.
I mean, if you already had it, does anybody feel the need to get it again? I kind of feel like this is a badly timed double.
I mean, now you can switch between soundtracks, so it's not like there's nothing to it. But I mean, you probably don't need to buy it again unless, having it for remote play, which again, you can already play it on Vita natively anyway. It's one of those things where people are all pissy about it, and I sort of don't get why, because it's a very easy just don't buy it.
Yeah, that's how I view it, as a just don't buy it. I didn't buy the original. I didn't buy the PS3 version, so this actually would work out well for me if I decided to do it. But
and also the way to look at it too is that a lot of people, you look at market research, and I hate to talk about that. There are a lot of people who own PS4s that do not own PlayStation 3s and never did.
Right.
So people crying foul and saying this is dumb and this is soulless and commercial. Yeah, they're trying to make money, but there are people who don't own PS3s. And for me personally, I hate the fact that I can't play PS3 games on PS4.
Yeah.
So, I would actually consider getting this just to be able to play it on my PS4. Because, I'm going to move to Japan I'm not bringing 3 consoles. I'm bringing my PS4.
I'm trying to figure out what I'm madder about. Not being able to play PlayStation 3 games on my PlayStation 4, or not being able to play PlayStation 1 classics on my PlayStation 4.
That you know what? Sony's press conference. You know how they get me to get another mic drop? They go backward compatible.
Could they do it with software at this point? Like, I don't know if that's even possible, but man, it would be nice.
I strongly suspect that if my cell phone can run PlayStation 2 games, my PlayStation 4 should be able to run PlayStation 2 games.
That's the other aspect, is like, I feel like the PlayStation 3, yeah, if you take away my backwards compatibility, that's completely fine, but then make sure that I still have the ability to play, like, I have the 2 Crimson, I almost said Crimson Butterfly, I have the 2 Fatal Frame games, and I can't play those, I can play those on my PlayStation 3, I can't play them on my PlayStation 4, like, that's, what the deuce? Like, what the hell, guys? Come on.
Yeah. Like, it's one of those things. It's like, I get why they took it out, blah, 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 whatever, feature inflation, wanting to move people forward. But that doesn't mean it doesn't suck. Like, I would love to only have my PS4 hooked up.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Yeah, I keep having to go back to my PS3 for reviewable stuff.
Yeah, or like, I want to go play Kingdom Hearts 2.5 or Birth by Sleep, and it's like, crap, I have to use, the PS3.
Yeah.
Getting an HDMI switch up with that, but you only have so much space near your TV.
Yeah, exactly.
And plus, it's just nice to have stuff unified. I don't know. I like minimalism. I like things being clean and simple. So simple and clean.
No, like the PS4, like you said, Rob, the interface on that is way better. I would like to not have to go back to the PS3 interface.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is I would like to be able. I at the very least, I just want it to be across the board. Like, if I can play PlayStation 2 games that I've already bought again on PlayStation 3, I should be able to play them on my PlayStation 4. Like, that to me would even make me feel better. Like, let's just get to that point. Let's make that work, and then I'll be a little bit happier. So.
I'm with you. That's all I had for news today, unless there was some big announcement you wanted to talk about.
No, I don't think you guys have anything else, but I have a couple shout-outs to give here, because remember, I tried to shill myself a little bit last time to get some more reviews.
And we got a couple.
Yes, we do. Robbie Savage gave us great, informative, entertaining show. I listen all the time, just not enough episodes. I know, we have personal lives. It's hard to get this thing going.
Well, I mean, I don't, but...
Well, I mean, just wait until you're married, dude. Trust me. It just goes.
I'm a workaholic, Rob. I love my work.
I know. I got a big one here that's very long, but I kind of want to read it because it makes me feel all nice and happy inside. Spreading the Experience Points by Guy Verhigst. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. I can't do it at all. But it's a long one there. This podcast is one of my favorites. I love the scope and range of games that the guys discuss, as well as all the countless treads into some of the past of some of the video game's greatest RPGs. I gotta read slower. They're quite the characters and play off of their chemistry quite well. The conversations, for the most part, are rather objective and give plenty of helpful insight into some of the most obscure and or indie titles. Yes, especially when we start going off into tangents about why The Last of Us is disappointing. Kidding. My wish list of games just keeps growing with every episode. Lastly, it's humbling to hear that the hosts of the show seem like everyday guys like myself and feel like you could be chatting with them about video games over a couple of whiskeys. I'm a Scotch man myself, but I will drink a whiskey. That's fine. Thanks, guys.
No, he's definitely a Scotch man. He wouldn't stop talking about it at MagFest.
That's true. Please give a shout out to Don. Well, Don, there's your shout out, dude. And you like Scotch now. You enjoyed what I gave you.
No, I like Scotch. I've never not liked Scotch. I mean, I did not like it years ago, but I was just trying to.
Yeah, now you've grown up. And last one from the External Heart. The guys in the show have great banter between each other. The comments are very informative and add great insight to the RPGs that are coming out. Again, guys, thanks so much for the kind words. We always love that stuff. It's nice to know that some people are actually listening. Makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. So for Steven and Dick... No, it never gets old. And I will definitely read more. If you guys keep giving us reviews, I will continue to read more of those. So I will shill myself here all day, every day.
Speaking of shilling, I'm about to shill one more time really quick, and this is completely unrelated, and I should normally do it on Rhythm Encounter, but we're doing Music of the Year, so that's going to be a while. I'm going to be published at Game Music Online starting in about a week with my translations of Japanese soundtrack liner notes, starting with Memoria, Yoko Shimomura's album. And it is amazingly fun to be able to engage with her words. So if you are interested, and I know this is a niche niche thing. If you would like to read the liner notes to albums, I'm going to be publishing my translations for the foreseeable future on Game Music Online, which is also an awesome site anyway, so go read them about game music.
Okay. So for Derek and Steven, make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or through the RSS feed. Make sure to give us comments and reviews, and we'll see you all later.
Bye.
Bye.